Do you know why toys are important? They help children dream. They let them imagine a better future.
Red tape and
I can feel it taking
take every hard-earned cent and use it to fund their Illuminati, Freemason sex parties.
When we think about the bombs and fallout, a lot of the devastation we see is riddled throughout the wasteland's environment from shady sands clear to Far Harbor. But between these locations lies mutated creatures that didn't exist from before the Great War, and new cities that are in power struggles from different factions. And in the noise of all the new chaos, there are untold stories of those who are alive as hell on earth began to take hold. Today, we wanted to uncover 3 hours of these micro stories to peek into the minds of those who witnessed atrocities across America. We're going to follow these personal holotapes, journal entries, and terminal logs to better understand what pilots went through as they saw nuclear blasts go off in the horizon, and how Vault-Tec employees found a new meaning in life as the world changed. We wanted to focus on what it was like leading up to the bombs falling, and how people survived during and shortly after the bombs fell. You'll hear about people who are addicts trying to find resolve in the new world, and from those who were complicit as authoritarianism began to take hold during the crisis. Let's go to the spots where these people died or disappeared and reflect on what it must have been like to live through hell. There are so many stories here that Mason and I wanted to make a compilation of all of those that we've come across. So if you enjoy Fallout, then you're in the right place. We have a ton of content on the channel and a lot more to come, so consider subbing. It would mean a lot. We also started our GTA channel a few weeks ago and have been dropping gems on that channel for all things Rockstar. So pop in and give us a visit if GTA is your cup of tea. Thanks for watching and enjoy the vid.
Randall Clark, or the Survivalist as most know him, was a man from Utah who lived before the bombs dropped. In Zion Canyon, we can find multiple entries in journals of his life during the fall of the bombs and years later. He recorded all of it, and this is his story. When the bombs fell in 2077, Randall Clark was driving home. He was a veteran, used to the wilderness and the army, but nothing could prepare him for that day. His truck died north of Spanish Fork at the same time as another car in the opposite lane. Within a minute, Salt Lake City was hit. He saw the flash and knew right away what had happened. Turning back, he counted more strikes as the ground shook. His wife Sharon and their son Alex were south of him, and in that moment he knew they were gone. His journal says,
"Didn't watch you die, Cher. Saved my eyes. Counted 12 more flashes next 7 minutes. Ground shook each time. 18 seconds later."
The couple from the other car were blinded by the blast. They screamed that they couldn't see, and Randall realized there was no help coming, so he gave them what he thought was the only mercy left. He sat them against their car, let them hold each other, and told them that everything would be okay, and then fired 2 shots. After that, he grabbed his rifle and pack and started walking. It took 5 days to reach Zion National Park. By then, his feet were torn from blisters and he could hardly sleep. He found a cave once used by the US Geological Survey, with abandoned gear and food supplies left behind, and that was the reason he survived those first months. Outside was nothing but danger. Black rain fell, and the Geiger counter spiked whenever he stepped out. In the army, he'd been told fallout would clear in 2 to 4 weeks, but months went by and the land was still dangerous. He would scrape condensation from the cave walls into bottles of water, and he kept recounting memories of his family, writing,
"You told me. Stop running off to the wild. Man belongs with his family. You were right. You were right. You were right. You were right. Wasn't there to hold you and my boy. Died without me. Never touch you or him again."
Rations from the survey team stretched for a while, but by January 2078, nearly everything was gone. At last, the radiation dropped enough to risk going outside. The world he stepped into was ruined. The snow glowed green, no animals moved, and he saw no signs of life. Quote,
"There's nothing alive out there."
By 2083, he had learned enough to start cataloging plants that he could eat. Banana yucca, mesquite, prickly pear. They were all mutated, but safe if harvested carefully. For the first time in years, he tasted something fresh instead of canned food. Strange insects appeared, and eventually he spotted bighorn sheep. They're bulkier and their horns grew differently, but they were alive. That gave him hope that the land could recover. The next year, he forced himself to travel back to Salt Lake City. It took 15 days, circling hotspots and foraging as he went, and the sight broke him. The city was nothing but craters, bent steel, and burned bricks. He couldn't even find his street. He told himself Sharon and Alex had been vaporized instantly, but he feared it might have been slower and worse. He wrote this as he got back.
"Don't know what I was thinking. Imagined I'd find my house, dig through the rubble, find something. Your bones, I hoped, and little nuts. Would have buried them. Here in Zion, maybe. SLC is mostly craters. Warped steel girders where high-rises sat, mounds of bricks. Never found our house, didn't even find the street. What wasn't a crater was scorched clean.
With nothing left to find, he returned to Zion and built a heavy electrified door on his cave. In 2095, he spotted a group of 28 people moving through the canyon. They spoke Spanish and kept repeating the word paradiso. He stayed hidden, watching. When one of the men broke his leg, Randall pretended to be him, screaming for help until the rest of the group found him. Later, he left antibiotics on a rock near the camp. They believed God had sent it. Randall only felt bitter about that. No God who let the bombs fall would care about medicine, but he still wanted them to live. A year later, more than 100 people in vault suits from number 22 arrived. They carried pistols and submachine guns and moved with discipline. They attacked the Mexican group, killing most of the men, and then trying to take the women and children and gunning down anyone who resisted. Randall couldn't stop it. Scouting their camp later, he realized they were also eating their captives. He called them coffers because they hacked and wheezed constantly, sick with something they had brought from their vault.
Say I go in at night and get the women and children out. Where to next? But I have to get them out. Have to.
For nearly a year, he fought them. Patrols were ambushed, traps went off, and their own grenades were turned against them. He even dragged bodies into traps to bait more of them in. By the end, dozens were dead, about a third of their force. In early 2097, his journal said the coffers were finally gone. He had beaten them, but he felt nothing from it. That same year, he came across Sylvie, trapped in one of his snares and screaming in pain. She had escaped from the coffers and called them children of the devil. Life in their group had been especially cruel for women, and she had run when the chance came. Randall freed her, treated the wound, and taught her how to live outside. For the first time in decades, he wasn't completely alone. By 2100, Sylvie was pregnant. Randall, 47 now, was terrified. He hiked for medical books and scavenged for supplies, determined to do better this time. In 2101, she went into labor. The baby was breech. Randall tried to turn him and then attempted a C-section too late, and the baby who he planned to name Michael died too. He buried them both south of the Narrows. His note said at least he would have been there with them. He thought about finally ending his life.
Baby was breech. Would have been a son, Michael. Did my best to turn him. Failed. Must have done cesarean too late. Had to put Sylvie out and she never woke up. Buried them south of the Narrows. Well, this time I was by their side. So much better. I think I can finally do it.
But he didn't. In 2108, he fought ghouls, first thinking the dead had risen. On 2113, on his 60th birthday, he joked about giving himself whiskey and a shotgun slug, but called himself a coward for not going through with it. In 2123, another group arrived. This time, 24 children. They were dirty and thin, the youngest only 8. They had escaped a place they called the school. At night, one of the older ones read stories to the little ones to help them sleep. Randall listened and remembered what it was like to hear family voices. He began leaving gifts and notes for them. First storybooks, then weapons guides, medical texts, and other supplies. In his notes, he signed himself as the Father. He told them to look after one another, to be kind, and to only fight when they had to. He wanted Zion to belong to them after everything they'd been through. By January 2124, he was dying. His cough had blood in it, likely cancer. He gave away what supplies he had left, but didn't want the children to see him weak. He climbed to Redgate, lay down, and waited. In his final entry, he admitted he had lied to Cher, Alex, and Sylvie when he said he would always be with them, but he wouldn't take it back. He wrote that maybe the only reason he kept living was to keep their faces alive in his memory for as long as he could. His last written words,
I wish them well. It's been a gift to me at the end of it all to behold innocence. Goodbye, Zion.
Randall Dean Clark, the survivalist, lived through the bombs, through years of isolation, through fighting cannibals and sickness. He buried everyone he cared about. In the end, he left Zion to the children who had no one else. This is a man who lost everything on the day the bombs fell and still kept going, trying to leave something better behind than what he was given. It's one of, if not the best recorded stories of a survivalist days after the bombs fell in the entire series.
Frederick Sinclair was a wealthy businessman and the creator of the Sierra Madre Casino. On the surface, it looked like a luxury resort built for the elite, but it was really meant to be something else, a shelter. Sinclair saw that the world was moving toward nuclear war, and he wanted to create a place that could survive it. But this wasn't just about survival alone, it was about Miss Keys, a singer he loved more than anything. The casino, of course, was built for her. Every decision he made, from the funding to the design, was driven by his hope that it would protect her when the bombs eventually dropped. She wasn't perfect though. She was famous, but she struggled with addiction, and that made her easy to manipulate. Dean Domino, a lounge performer and con artist, saw that weakness and planned to use her to rob the casino. Sinclair found out about the plan before Vera could tell him, and even when she finally confessed, it didn't really soften the betrayal. He realized that the two people he trusted the most had been plotting behind his back. When Sinclair learned what Dean was up to, he changed everything. He turned the vault, originally meant to be a fallout shelter, into a trap. The system's locks and security holograms were reprogrammed to ensure that anyone entering the vault without permission would never escape. His goal was simple. If Dean tried to rob him, he'd die trying. But the plan went too far. The casino systems became so complicated and self-contained that even Sinclair couldn't override them. Then, of course, the bombs fell. Whatever he had built to protect Miss Keys now became a tomb. In his final message to her, he apologizes by saying, "Vera, if you're reading this, my fears have come to pass, and this is an apology. I hope you realized what my last words meant to you. If so, they have led you here, and this place will keep you safe. I know what they meant for me, and I fear they have trapped me here. I have extracted the previous entry after our conversation tonight. It can't have been easy for you, and I am sorry for all I put you through in silence. I know, while you do not love me, you did not mean any malice in what you did. I knew about your plans to rob the casino with Dean before you told me. Hearing it from you didn't make it any easier. For what it's worth, I am glad you told me yourself, and I understood the tapes he had in his possession. I do not think either one of you realized what your addiction stemmed from, however, and that is the tragedy in this. I suspect the world would not have believed you, regardless, so I respect your desire to keep it from others. When first building this villa, this casino, I meant it for you. As the world seemed to race headlong toward war, it became part of my desire to protect you. The loans, the funding I poured into the casino's construction, I knew it would not matter when war came for us. It was my means of creating a shelter, a defense if the world was bombarded in radiation and bombs. When Dean revealed his plans inadvertently through our introduction, I realized what had happened and how I had been tricked. For a time, my thoughts were dark. I changed the casino vault from a shelter to a trap as I knew the first one to enter would be Dean. He would die down here, and it would have been by his own hand. I fear, however, that I overstepped myself, and the only safe place in the casino is the vault. I have tried to rewire the systems, change the protocols, and I cannot. I will do one last check on the pipes by the edge of the outside platform and see if anything can be done. I fear it is useless. If you come down here, do not access my personal account's entry. It contains only a message for Dean, and it will seal the door, and you will have no way out. Even the elevator is designed to automatically return when the door is closed, and it will lock in place. There should be enough in the vault to sustain you until help arrives, though I have ensured that there is enough medical supplies down here to keep you comfortable. The hologram should defend the casino from any attackers, and the hologram beacon in the villa will broadcast an emergency signal so that others know you are here. When danger has passed, rescue will come. I hope you were able to read this and know that I loved you. Frederick Sinclair. His final words to Miss Keys were filled with guilt and love. He believed the holograms would protect her and that rescue would eventually come, but of course it never did. The world outside was gone, and the Sierra Madre stood frozen in time as an ode to love and obsession. And ultimately, it ended up being the last desperate hope of a man who tried to save someone when there was no world left to save. This fish packing plant was just a regular seafood plant. The people there weren't soldiers or politicians, just workers processing fish in Boston on the day everything ended. Their terminals give a glimpse of what it looked like when the bombs fell from the point of view of people who didn't even know what was happening until it was too late. Before October, the records are normal business logs, fish imports, fish exports, and temperature checks. They talk about cod and flounder shipments like it's any other year. The company was doing well with steady supplies and good output. There are small complaints about fumes from delivery trucks, broken fans, and a thermostat being bumped too high, which could ruin the entire batches of fish. These were normal work issues though, the kind that fill up your day when life still makes sense. By August, one of the employees, Jane, was already frustrated about the air quality. She left one day because the exhaust from trucks gave her headaches. She still sounded upbeat, even polite, asking her coworker George to finish her contract for her. Again, just a normal email between coworkers. Then October 23rd hit, the day the bombs fell. The factory was still running. Jane sent another message, and this time her tone had changed completely. She could hear that sirens were going off outside. Nobody was explaining what was happening though. She wrote that they were told to lock the doors and wait until someone got back to them. And at this point, this was half an hour ago. She was confused, scared, and just trying to stay calm. She even ended the message casually, asking Dave to bring her a Nuka-Cola when he came up. That one line makes it clear she didn't quite understand how serious things were. Dave replied to her soon after, and he said he couldn't bring the Nuka because the main lift had been shut off, trapping the lower level workers. He mentioned hearing rumbling and shaking, probably the bombs hitting, and that some of the shelves had fallen over. He said that everyone downstairs was concerned but still thought it was something temporary. He asked Jane to tell him if she heard anything new, and that's the last message either of them ever sent. Those short emails captured the moment the world ended for regular people. The sirens were blaring, the ground was shaking, and they were still talking about soda and work problems as shit was hitting the fan all around them. They didn't know they were some of the last people alive in that part of the city. The plant's logs kept running until the power failed, but the workers never made it out. The fish packing plant became one more frozen piece of history from the day the world ended. A place where people were doing their jobs one moment and waiting for help that never came the next.
Final entry, Saturday, October 23rd, 2077. This is Megan Hayes. I'm a tour guide here at the Concord Museum of Freedom. I am so scared. Everyone saw the flashes, they left. Even Mr. Nash. He just ran away and left me here. Jerk. And then one of those army helicopter things crashed into the roof. I saw soldiers, but they looked freaked out. I just hid from them. I've only been in Massachusetts a month. I don't really know anyone, and I don't know where to go. I broke the lock on the curator's desk and took the gun. I'm going to hide in one of the rooms for a few days until things calm down. If anybody reads this, please come find me. But if you try to hurt me, I swear I'll shoot you.
Her entry comes from the very first day of the war, written in Concord, Massachusetts. The area around Boston was hit early during the Great War. Panic spread instantly, with people rushing out of Concord looking for safety farther inland. Hayes wasn't from Massachusetts and had no family in the area, which left her completely alone. The Concord Museum of Freedom where she worked wasn't built for survival. It was just an old colonial building with limited supplies and little protection. When the vertibird crashed into the roof, people saw that even the military had lost control within minutes of the bombs dropping. Soldiers stumbling through the wreck only added to her fear. She didn't know what had happened beyond the museum walls. With no clear idea of where the strikes landed and no way to reach anyone, she decided to hide inside with the curator's gun. In a city filled with radiation and desperate survivors, even footsteps near doors could have meant trouble. This is the last entry we have for her. Who knows what happened? The switchboard was an old DIA listening post hidden under the Slocum Joe's donut shop in Massachusetts. By the time of the Great War, it was still running and tied into the US Defense Network. The facility's terminals contain reports from the hours leading up to the end of the world. On October 23, 2077, files record a steady climb through the DEFCON stages. Early that morning, threats were flagged, and by midday, confirmation came that the country had gone to DEFCON 1. A short time later, the logs note nuclear detonations on US soil, including strikes in Pennsylvania and New York. Soon after, everything shut down. The switchboard's mainframe recorded the last events before the collapse. Other entries inside the complex explain how the place operated before that day. The SIGINT desks used the Slocum Joe's shop as a cover. Workers posed as regular staff while funneling intelligence back upstairs. They were instructed to deflect questions and maintain the disguise, while the agency gathered surveillance data worldwide. Reports mentioned transmissions from Afghanistan, research on possible Chinese stealth projects, and all of it was routed into an experimental program called PAM. The predictive analytic machine was built to forecast global conflicts. It was asked to simulate war scenarios and assess potential Chinese actions. The results were direct. One conclusion was that even a successful first strike on the United States would not allow conquest, since most of the arsenal would survive. Another estimate claimed China was working on stealth submarine programs. Based on gaps in intelligence and suspicious resource shipments, personnel grew frustrated with its rigid logic, and some described the machine as stubborn. By the late 2070s, PAM was considered accurate enough to brief national leadership. One of the final assessments placed the chance of alert levels rising in October 2077 at only 12%. Days later, the bombs fell. The switchboard wasn't just an office. Security was spread throughout the tunnels, automated doors, tripwires, spotlights, and turrets all wired into the network. It was designed to withstand sabotage and keep intelligence flowing, even if the surface was destroyed. When the missiles were confirmed and the power failed, the defenses no longer mattered. These records are different from journals or personal notes. They're an official government log in its final hours, only warnings and responses until the terminals cut out. And that last DEFCON status entry has left the community guessing about what happened with the bombs years later.
DEFCON status 2077. Anchorage all clear. DEFCON 3. Compact reports 3. USOS off Calif Coast. JCS advise. USAF has eyes on squadron of airplanes, possible Chinese, at high altitude off Bering Strait. IONS reports 4 probable launches. DEFCON 2. NORAD confirms birds in air. DEFCON 1. Authenticated order. Response scenario. MXCN91. Repeat. MXCN91. Pennsylvania, New York. Confirmed strike. Offline, offline, offline.
Cambridge Polymer Labs is one of the clearest records we have of what happened inside a workplace when the bombs dropped. It was a research lab, and the people inside were just scientists trying to meet a military deadline. The entries tell a full story, from the morning before the war to the chaos that later came. The team was working on something called the Nucleostrictive Lining Project. The idea was to create a special material for power armor that could turn radiation into usable energy. It used a mix of gold, lithium hydride, and uranium with the hope of making soldiers' armor self-powering in the field. Kind of a genius idea. The science worked, but the material kept breaking down under heat and pressure. Every time they fixed one problem, another problem popped up. The head of the project was Dr. Erica Elwood, and her husband John was the lab's director. They were both under military pressure, especially from Colonel Kemp, to deliver fast results. On the morning of October 23rd, John sent a cheerful email to everyone. He told them to push through mandatory overtime, said he had ordered coffee and donuts, and mentioned that if they had heard tanks or gunfire outside, it was just a military training exercise. Again, the devil is in the details. That line alone tells you that he already knew something serious was going on and was downplaying the whole thing. He'd gotten a strange phone call from Colonel Kemp earlier that morning telling him to keep the entire staff in the lab no matter what. Kemp didn't necessarily explain why, but after the call dropped, John realized it was a warning. When the bombs hit Boston, the lab survived the blast, but the EMP fried every outside communication line. John lied to his team, telling them the noises and shaking were part of those training exercises. He knew that if they found out the truth, that a nuclear bomb had gone off, they'd of course try to leave, and he couldn't risk that. A few hours later, the military confirmed what he had already feared. They could only extract personnel who had vital military assets. So what this meant was that if the nucleostrictive project wasn't finished, the people in the lab would be left to die. So he locked down the clean room, told everyone to keep working, and promised that once they had completed the prototype, they'd be released. As you can imagine, the staff didn't believe him for long. The air system started to fail, radiation alarms went off, and no one outside was responding. People started to panic. Will Bergman, one of the senior scientists, had military training and tried to take control. He didn't trust John anymore. He thought the director was keeping them trapped for no reason, and so he tried hacking into the lab's administrative system to override the lockdown. John caught him and blocked his access, and that's when the lab completely fell apart. Erica, still trying to focus on her research, had actually found a way to solve the thermal dissipation problem that had been holding the project back. But Will didn't care about that anymore. He was focused on escaping. He locked himself in the isotope containment lab, sealed off access to the uranium they needed, and planned to trigger the facility breach alarm. This alarm would open every locked door, but it would also activate the lab's automated defenses. The robots and turrets would target anything alive. Panic set in, John tried to warn him off, but Will was already past reasoning. Meanwhile, Erica and 2 others, Tom and Mary, tried to climb through the ceiling to get around the barricade and stop him. They planned to take Will by surprise before he could activate the defenses. At the same time, John's health was failing. He'd been shot while scavenging for supplies in the city, and the wound had gone septic. He was also sick from radiation exposure. In one of his last logs, he admits he can't hold out much longer and apologizes to Erica. He tells her he only kept them there because he thought finishing the project was their only chance at rescue. The final note suggests that Will went through with his plan. The system records show the facility breach protocol was triggered, unlocking every door and activating the defenses. After that, the logs stop. No more messages from anyone since the lab's security robots and turrets likely killed everyone inside. The tragedy of this place is that they actually did figure it out. The last surviving experiment in the lab, still running when the player finds it centuries later, proves Erica's design worked. They finished what they were told to do, but no one ever came back for them. The people who stayed behind were never rescued, and the lab that was supposed to change the world became their tomb.
You're standing in the mayor's shelter, deep under Boston, where 3 holotapes were left. These tapes weren't found in a desk or a record vault. They're just scattered about the bunker, and they all contain different perspectives. When you press play, you'll hear 3 voices. The bodyguard trying to keep some order, the mayor trying to protect his family, and the mayor's wife reaching out for hope where there is none. They don't know what's coming, but all of them feel the building closing in. As you listen, imagine the shelter around you. Lights going out, whispers in the corridors, below the utility rooms and gym, the places they told people to go. The first tape is a guard.
Found the mayor in the tub last night. Locked the door before the missus found him. Didn't want her to see him like that. I told her he'll be back soon and not to worry. In the meantime, I told her to take the children down to the utility room in the gym and wait for the all clear. Situation's getting out of control and we're outnumbered. It's only a matter of time before this place falls into chaos.
Things seem to be going bad in the shelter. The guard is losing control and the mayor is dead. And he left behind his own tape.
Hi, sweetheart. I'm sorry it had to end this way. I tried to build a place where our children could live comfortably. You know, I'm a family man, and know our children come first. I'd do anything for them, even at the expense of taxpayers' money. The mob has broken through, and it's only a matter of time before they reach the lower level. As a last resort to protect our family, I give you... well, I give you myself. Take my body to the people. Tell them I died a coward. Maybe they will leave you in peace. I left the key to the safe with one of the attendants. I forget his name. Anyway, goodbye, my darling. I love you and the children so much.
The people he was talking about, this mob, they were a group trying to get into the shelter after the bombs had fell. They wanted in, and they wanted blood. The last holotape is the mayor's wife.
Where are you, honey? I've been told to take the children to a safe place near the gym. Are you okay? The children are scared. This whole situation is my fault. I convinced you we needed all of this stuff if the worst ever happened. Now look at what's happening. All my fault. When you come back... Oh, hold on. Looks like the little one's hungry. Shh. It's okay, baby girl. Don't cry. It's okay. Mommy's here. Listen, when you come back, let's get out of here. Let them have this place. We don't need it. I love you, honey. See you soon.
It's a good example of how status or class became non-existent in the post-world. The mayor couldn't handle the chaos and left his family to clean up his mess. The guard decided to lock his body away in hopes that he could spare them from the trauma. But in the end, the mob managed to storm the shelter, and whatever happened next probably didn't go well for anyone.
My name is Carrie Delaney. I teach 4th grade at the Early Dawn Elementary School in Washington, D.C. Yesterday, October 23rd, 2077, half the school went on a field trip to Lamplight Caverns. We were packing up to leave when everything went crazy. The cave started shaking, the lights went out, the kids started screaming. My God! Mr. Pollock went outside to see what was going on. When he came back in, he told us what he saw. Clouds. Mushroom clouds. It's finally happened. The end of the world.
Carrie Delaney's writing comes out of Early Dawn Elementary, where she worked as a 4th grade teacher in Washington, D.C. When the bombs fell on October 23, 2077, she was with her class on a field trip. The ground shook, lights went out, and she gathered the students to safety in the caves of where they were visiting. What she left behind are journal entries that record the terror of that day and what came after. Her first entry, as we heard, describes the moment it happened. The tunnels shook, the kids screamed, and she realized it was nuclear war. There were mushroom clouds in the distance and the end of the world. Food was scarce from the start. The school hadn't been designed as a fallout shelter, so once they were stuck inside, there was no rescue coming and very little to keep everyone alive. Imagine having all those kids and trying to be responsible and keep them alive and safe. The crying alone would be madness.
We're all okay, if you can call being stuck in a cave with 82 terrified kids okay. Alive, anyway. But I don't know what the hell we're going to do. It's been 4 days. Claudia went out this morning to look around and never came back. Then Mr. Cobb went out to look for her, and he never came back. So now there's only me, 2 other teachers, 2 of the parents who were chaperoning, and a few of the cavern staff. And all these poor kids. We've got enough food and water to last for a while, I guess. But after that, I just don't know. We can't stay in here forever. Can we?
These holotapes are pretty interesting. They record the day-to-day struggle of a teacher trying to protect her class in impossible conditions. She talked about calming the children. She described how rations kept running out. She also said she hopes that someone might eventually find them. In the end, her words leave a record of a group isolated in the dark with no real chance of surviving what the war had already taken from them. But here we see the beginnings of what would later be called Little Lamplight, a settlement run only by children.
In the days leading up to the Sierra Madre's grand opening, the people working inside had no idea they were living through the last normal moments before the bombs fell. One of the few records from that time comes from the casino's medical clinic. The doctor there kept notes on the people who came in, and those entries gave us a clear look at what was happening right before everything ended. The entries start with Vera Keys, the same singer that Frederick Sinclair built the casino for. She came into the clinic without Sinclair, but she was with Dean Domino. He told the doctor that Vera had a throat infection and asked if the auto doc could help. The doctor, of course, thought that was strange because the Sierra Madre had its own auto doc. Domino brushed it off, saying he didn't want to alarm Sinclair, which already made things suspicious. The doctor ran tests and found that Miss Key's voice was fine. There was no infection at all. What was really happening was that she had become dependent on Med-X, a strong painkiller that was also addictive. Her, quote, loss of voice, quote, was really just exhaustion and the effects of long-term chem use. When the doctor tried to talk to Miss Keys about it, Domino stepped in and shut it down immediately. He treated it like a joke, laughing when the doctor warned that too much Med-X could send someone into a coma. The doc lost his temper, and Domino ended the visit by saying they'd come back when he was in better spirits. The doctor wrote that he despised Domino, which gives you an idea of how tense that encounter really was. Not long after, Domino came back alone. He asked about Miss Key's test results and whether her voice would recover in time for the gala event, the big opening night performance. The doctor told him that if Miss Keys was worried, she needed to come in herself. He refused to share private medical details with Domino. He also explained that if her voice ever truly got damaged, the auto doc could fix it, even through surgery if needed. That answer seemed to calm Domino down. He eventually apologized and tried to smooth things over by leaving the doctor a bottle of wine. The doctor said he found it inappropriate and tried to refuse. Now, this is where the entries stop. It's the last medical record before the casino locked down and the bomb started to fall. Miss Keys, Domino, and Sinclair were all caught in their own plans, and no one realized they were hours away from the world ending. The clinic logs give us a rare look at that exact moment. A doctor just doing his job, caught between people hiding secrets, and a war about to erase everything. The police at the Sierra Madre Villa were just regular officers trying to do their jobs, but their terminal entries make it clear that things were getting stranger by the day before the bombs hit. Their boss, Frederick, had strict rules for everything coming in and going out of the villa. He didn't want anything radioactive or foreign entering the resort, claiming it was for safety reasons. The officers were told that an automated system would check visitors and confiscate anything dangerous, even small items, then mail them back to the person's address. When the police asked about the construction crews and whether those workers should be searched too, Sinclair brushed it off. He said that was a villa matter, meaning it was handled by somebody else, most likely Dean Domino, who seemed to have more influence than he should have. Sinclair's security ideas didn't make the officers' jobs easy. The chief complained that the list of banned items was nearly impossible to enforce. He even admitted that one of Sinclair's friends tried to pressure him about being more flexible with visitors. That same friend also hinted he could cut off supplies if the police weren't cooperative. It's clear from the chief's tone that he didn't trust any of these people, but he didn't have much of a choice. He had to balance Sinclair's paranoia about security with the fact that the villa's management didn't want to upset wealthy guests or slow down the casino's grand opening. The terminals also talk about Sinclair's hologram guards. The police thought the holograms made their jobs pointless since those glowing sentries could instantly kill intruders. One officer even said he didn't understand why Sinclair needed living guards at all. Still, the police stayed on duty and tried to manage security while preparing for the gala event, the big night meant to celebrate the casino's grand opening. The chief made absolutely sure the police station was stocked. They had shotguns, ammo, and mines in case of trouble, and Sinclair seemed convinced something big could happen, possibly a war or an attack. The dispensers around the villa, which most people thought were just fancy vending machines, could also unlock ammo and repair kits using special codes. Those codes were stored in the contraband room in case of emergency. The officers weren't happy about the vending machines though. They only worked using Sierra Madre casino chips, which the guards got as part of their paycheck. It meant they were basically forced to buy their food and supplies from Sinclair's machines. One of them even called it a company store, saying it felt like Sinclair wanted total control over everyone who lived or worked there. As the night of the gala got closer, the chief focused on the event more than the rules. He told his officers to go easy on the guests. One of the guards mentioned setting up a radio to listen to the performance and said he was going to stash drinks and food from the evidence room to celebrate after his shift. They still didn't realize how close they were to the end. The last entries mention how quiet the night was. The officer expected to listen to Vera Keys sing from the casino over the radio, not knowing that the entire Sierra Madre was about to be sealed off forever. The police were thinking about enforcing rules, guarding doors, and finishing their shifts. But outside those walls, the bombs were about to fall. The resort that was supposed to be a safe escape turned into a locked tomb for everyone inside.
Tina, it's me, your brother, Alex. Listen, Mom would kill me if she knew I was contacting you, but she's being an impossible bitch right now. You have to come home. Do you understand me? This thing with China, it's not going away. We're gonna try and get into one of those vaults. If that doesn't work, well, I have a backup plan. There's this secure bunker, another sort of vault, inside the National Guard depot, and look, no matter what it takes, the whole damn Keller family's gonna ride this storm out, but you've got to get your ass home, now.
The story of the Keller family is tied to the panic and confusion of October 23rd. The Kellers had something that most civilians didn't: direct ties and a connection to a government facility, the National Guard depot in the Capitol Wasteland. Alex Keller, who served in the Guard, had managed to get access to the Armory's security code. To keep it hidden, he split the digits into parts and passed them along to his relatives. It meant that only the family together could open the Armory's doors. But in reality, it left their chance of safety hanging on everyone surviving the war and being able to regroup.
Paul, it's me, Tina. I heard back from my sister Candace. We couldn't get into a vault. 101, 87, didn't matter. All full to capacity. But my brother Alex is a soldier and he sort of stole the passcode for a secure army bunker. He did it for the family, but they caught him. Before they took him into custody, Alex, he sent us each one number of the 4-digit code. That way we all have to be together to get in. He gave me number 5, the day of my birth. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm still leaving. It's been fun. Kind of. Oh, and I'm not pregnant, so no worries.
That code arrangement ended up working against them instead of offering protection.
Mom, it's Candace. Oh my God, it's really happening. I can see the cloud. It's so big. Mom, I'm so scared. I'm heading to the vault now. I'll do whatever I can to get inside. My number of the passcode was 7, right?
Ralphie, son, this is your father. We can't get into the goddamn vault without you. Get your ass over here now. My 4 is useless without you, boy.
The National Guard installation wasn't built as a civilian refuge at all. It was a fortified site meant to secure weapons, supplies, and communications gear for military use. The Keller family's access wasn't about their well-being. It was about keeping military equipment locked away until it could be reclaimed.
Candace, it's Ralph. Tell Dad there's no way in hell I'm spending nuclear Armageddon trapped with him in a fucking closet. You can have my number. It's 6. Now if you'll excuse me, I've got a mushroom cloud to walk into. Have a happy Holocaust.
After the war, what's left of their history is found in the wasteland. The Keller family transcripts are spread across the Capitol wasteland, and collecting them is the only way to open the depot's sealed bunker. Inside sits the armory, along with the last trace of the family, Mr. Keller himself, and he's now a glowing one. Even with inside knowledge and a connection to the old world, survival was never certain, and ties to its bureaucracy could end up making things a lot worse. The Germantown police headquarters became a shelter when the bombs fell. It wasn't a vault, just an ordinary municipal building that the National Catastrophe Relief Auxiliary tried to convert into a relief and treatment station. The records left behind by presiding officer Nancy Croydon show the collapse of order as the weeks dragged on. There's a lot of entries, so I'll break down the story similar to Randall Clark. At first, her unit was mobilized like any other civil defense team. Their duty had been evacuating populations, but the strikes on DC changed everything. Survivors from the surrounding towns crowded into the police station, and when a National Guard detachment rolled in from Pennsylvania, Germantown turned into an improvised refugee site. Looting had already started in the area, and the Guard barely arrived in time to stop people from tearing each other apart. Resources were scarce from the start. Radiation sickness spread quickly, and the medical staff had almost nothing to fight with. The entries mentioned desperate searches for treatments like Prussian blue that might buy people time, but those supplies never came. The quarantine wing was set up not because patients were contagious, but because seeing the dying created panic. Croydon and her nurses tried to keep morale up, hiding the worst of it in easing pain with the painkillers and alcohol they had left. When those ran out, all they could offer was prayer. Desertions followed. Some survivors talked about trying to find a vault, convinced they could force their way inside. A few of the relief workers left with them. Croydon called them fools, but she admitted the station was barely holding together. The rations and water from the artesian well were locked up, but every day there were fewer hands to guard them. By the later entries, the writing reads like the words of someone preparing for the end. Croydon confessed she had started wearing a head wrap so the patients wouldn't see her own hair falling out. She felt more like a preacher than a nurse, keeping spirits alive when the medicine was gone. In her final note, she wrote a farewell, hoping one of her sisters might someday find it. She said she had tried, and that was all she could do. I suppose it seems only right to say goodbye. I ought to know it's hopeless, but maybe one of my sisters is still out there, and I couldn't go without leaving some kind of farewell. Just know that I did everything I could. I tried, and I only wish that I could be the last to go, so I could have helped all the others before they met their own end. Terminals elsewhere in the building contain 911 call records. They capture the chaos of the day the world ended. Routine emergencies like a house fire, nonsense calls from people already breaking down, and a domestic call where a woman begged for help before the line was taken over by a man threatening her. These transcripts show how the system itself was overwhelmed. Dispatchers were still answering, but the world outside was already falling apart. I'll read the last dispatch, which is the creepiest in my opinion. 911, do you have an emergency? Please help me. I think someone is outside. I heard a noise and it looks like someone is out there. Remain calm. I'm sending a squad car over. May I please have your name and address for confirmation? Sound of a glass breaking. I think he's in the house now. Please send help. Oh my God. I think I hear him. Ma'am, I've dispatched a squad car. It should arrive within minutes. Then there's a sound of a scuffle. Sorry for the scare. My wife just, and then there's a muffled scream. Forgot to take her pills this morning. Everything is okay. Then there's a long pause. No need for that squad car either. Have a nice day. They hang up. Call terminated. Caller. By the time the lone wanderer reaches the building in Fallout 3, the relief station is long gone. The super mutants have claimed the ruins, but the terminals still hold the words of the people who tried to make a safe place there, even if it was only for a short time.
This is a different group of people than the casino staff. These are soldiers and techs who ran a missile silo, specifically the Hopeville missile silo bunker. Their logs read like a station slowly going quiet while the world fell apart. First, the power went out. With the main power showing offline, emergency power was ready but only on standby. The automated systems that keep things locked and armed stopped working. Every security level says non-operational. That means doors, locks, and safety checks that used to run by themselves were now dead. The crew had to decide whether to trust the machines or take action by hand. Food and supplies were a mess. The commissary's machines locked down, and the pay memo they gave the crew were counterfeit proof on paper, but they turned out to be the same size as bottle caps, so the machines couldn't tell the difference. People got told to stop running between terminals because the whole system pulled from the same store. In plain language, there was no easy way to get more whiskey or snacks, and technicians were busy fixing the bigger problems. The entries show a lot of small human things: boredom, frustration, and trying to follow procedure while stuff stopped working. Technicians fixed what they could, and clerks reminded people not to waste time. If the comms and power stayed down, the silo would be a locked box with no way to resupply. The mainframe finally became reachable, and that's when the real choice showed up in the logs. The system only offered two options: leave the mainframe alone or open the bunker doors. Opening the doors meant exposing the silo to the outside. People could get in or out, but it also meant losing whatever safety the sealed bunker gave them. Leaving things alone meant staying shut in with limited supplies and systems offline. These were trained people used to following orders and checklists. Now they were making judgment calls that mattered for survival. The logs don't have long speeches or drama, but consisted of short notes, and the occasional joke about bottle caps or apples. The crew simply was trying to keep to routine while the world burned, counting power percentages, tracking supplies, and deciding if or when they should open a door that might be the difference between life and death. The Jamaica Plain janitor's logs are one of the clearest looks into what an ordinary person was doing right before the bombs dropped. He wasn't a soldier or a Vault-Tec scientist. In fact, he was the furthest thing from someone with power or knowledge of what was to come. He was just a maintenance worker trying to keep an old building running while city officials wasted money on a project called the Treasures of Jamaica Plain. The first entries are fairly simple. In July, he's happy the council finally approved renovations for the basement, new pipes, better air conditioning. He's tired of fixing leaks and systems that break every summer. By September, things are looking better for him personally. The staff surprises him with a cake for his 25th work anniversary, and he's proud of how long he's been keeping the place together, even if he spends all his time in the basement. Then things start going wrong, as they tend to do in Fallout. A few days later, he finds out the mayor has taken all the renovation money and put it toward her Treasures exhibit. They're tearing up his workspace, laying down marble floors, and putting in fancy security systems instead of fixing the building's problems. In fact, he doesn't even know what's supposed to be in this new exhibit. He jokes that it might as well be gold bars. By the end of September, he's clearly frustrated. The city wants him to help with the exhibit, but the heating system is failing, and the pipes are barely holding. He gets complaints from staff when the weather turns cold, and he can already tell it's going to get worse once winter hits. He writes that the city council should have spent money on maintenance instead of the mayor's pet project. In early October, they install protectrons and a new laser security grid. He nearly gets himself killed setting it up because it's so sensitive. The security takes over half the basement, while the ceiling and plumbing above him are still falling apart. He doesn't understand why no one else sees how ridiculous it is. He even mentions how shocked he is that the city council approved this whole thing to begin with. By mid-October, the exhibit opens. Hardly anyone comes. 3 visitors in one day, if that. The mayor keeps pretending everything's fine, but the janitor can tell the project is a disaster. The money's gone, the equipment barely works, and now he's just trying to stop tourists from wandering into his office. Then comes October 23rd, 2077, the day the bombs fell. His last entry is of course short. He says that he heard it, that things are bad outside. He's calm, but he knows what's happening. He says there won't be any ceremony that night, meaning the city event is canceled because everyone's probably dead. He states he's going to lock up the Treasures exhibit before trying to leave, hoping maybe it'll mean something to someone in the future. And that's the end of it. One man sitting in a basement, hearing the world end. His final act was to close the exhibit that ruined his job, because even then, he wanted to leave something behind for whoever came next.
There's a lot of information coming out of the Charleston Capitol building in Fallout 76. Entries of responders during and a few years after the bombs fell. I'm telling you this now because this segment might feel a little chaotic, which the whole situation was. Anyways, hopefully I can help you see the bigger picture of what was going on here. The Capitol building became the center for a provisional council, and you can see the struggles in its entries. Messages to the missing governor are piling up.
Governor Evans, where the hell are you? The bombs have fallen. The government is in shambles.
Staff can't reach Washington. Different leaders are arguing over who's in charge, while responders are handling fires, food runs, and riots.
This provisional council is a farce.
It isn't one clear chain of command. It's a tug of war while the city falls apart around them. The crime record shows how fast order had already cracked. Responders handled major cases, handed down exile sentences, and tried to hold a line with too few people.
Christmas Eve, 7 responders dead, 24 injured.
A bank job turned into a shooting at dawn.
Opened fire on Goldman, killing him.
A chem dealer got hard labor.
Over 300 pounds of illegal chems, sentenced to 5 years hard labor.
And then there was a kidnapping case that ended with the family split up and the kids in foster care. because there wasn't any other system left to take them.
Both agreed to voluntary exile. Children left in foster care.
Then a Christmas Eve raid hit the city limits and responders died in bunches.
Subject Jane Doe is the sole living raider, tied to the raider leader.
Charleston was chaos incarnate, as you can see. I'm only reading bits and pieces, and the information is stacking up. Other files track bigger threats. Holbrook's scouts brought back a severed head that wasn't a ghoul and could talk. Well, could talk when it still had its head. Clearly early proof of super mutants in Appalachia.
Bigger, tougher, able to talk and use guns. Some kind of super mutant.
Reports mention paramilitary figures at a power plant, armored and unknown.
Some at the power plant had power armor, so she didn't try to approach.
Messages out of Harper's Ferry said the Free States left their bunkers with the food and gear while the capital scrambled to feed its own people.
The Free States have left their bunkers and retaken Harper's Ferry. Plenty of food and supplies.
One memo called the Mountain Winter a massacre and blamed the rich who locked themselves away when things got bad.
You don't want to know what they resorted to up there. Those rich outsiders. The real monsters.
More and more reports kept piling in, and these people had to keep trying to figure out what the hell was even happening. And this is all taking place in the few years after the bombs fell. The registrar's office laid out how the city tried to ration without tearing itself apart.
Christmas celebration. Do not allow anyone without a valid ID. No exceptions. Any overages will be deducted from your own rations.
Another entry suspended driving services and ordered staff to pivot to records for aid runs.
All vehicular registration and licensing services suspended. Staff provide record support for the first responders.
Put together, the Charleston Capitol entries are a record of people trying to be a state again with half of their tools missing. Clerks still stamp forms. Responders drag the wounded in and the dead out. Politicians argued in empty rooms. And somewhere in those halls, a robot at the DMV still tells you to take a number.
Please wait for your number to be called.
MedTech research reads like a bad day that never ended. The first alarms come in as a security alert alpha. Containment goes live and guards are told to hold the site with deadly force being authorized. The order is fairly short and cold. Doors lock, the airlock refuses access, people inside hear the change in tone and know that this isn't a drill. Then an executive override hits. The same terminal flips to alert canceled and deadly force is pulled back, but staff are told to stay on station and wait for more instructions. This constant back and forth order is everywhere. Reception, lab, security, even the cell block controls. So the floor staff sit with mixed messages while control upstairs keeps toggling the rules. On the admin terminal, you see why. A burst of system notes include a nuclear activity alert from head office, corporate comms online, emergency containment on, then executive evacuation procedures activated. The executives move to get out while telling everyone else to hold. The same screen also keeps old memos no one bothered to hide, like Mentat sales up 24% in school districts, Fixer up 12%, a new product called Prevent projected to explode in revenue the next 2 years. Down in the lab and cell blocks, security panels keep cycling. Lockdown engaged, lockdown lifted. Local guards can seal or open the doors in their hallway, but they don't control the big picture. Protectron pods are still on charge with personality modes sitting at default. Turret firmware says error and then all clear, which makes no sense, and diagnostics list 2 linked units at 0% flagged with errors and distant readouts. In plain terms, defensive hardware is half dead, half armed, and no one on the floor knows what the hell is going on. The airlock terminal keeps rejecting open doors while flashing the earlier order to hold containment. Somewhere above, admin cancels the alert again. The pattern looks like this. Lock down the building when the first nuclear alert lands, lift it so the executive route can proceed, then freeze everyone else in place until executive personnel say otherwise. The instructions to security never mention families, never mention outside conditions. They're about site integrity and nothing else. What people in the building were dealing with minute to minute is easy to picture from these screens. A receptionist watching her terminal flip from red to green and back. A guard staring at use of deadly force authorized, then minutes later rescinded and still not allowed to leave. A lab tech looking at turret panels that say both error and all clear, trying to decide if walking past the node will get himself killed. Someone at the cell block door hitting open, then close, just to prove the panel still listens to them. All the while, the big doors stay under someone else's key. It's basically one big mindfuck. The executive terminal gives the only timeline that feels honest. Nuclear alert was received, comms with corporate established, containment triggered, then the evacuation order for leadership. No pep talk or comfort, just a process. The floor sees different screens like mandatory hold, remain on station, and nothing about extraction. Those sales and research blurbs matter because they tell you what the company valued the day before this happened, like mentats in schools. In the same breath, the prevent experiments are hurting people and the cost to acquire more bodies is rising. It sets the tone for why the orders read the way they do when the city starts to burn. Keep the facility locked, protect the asset, and get the right people out. By the end of the log trail, there's no heartfelt sign-off. There's just this canceled alert stamped across multiple rooms, dead turrets that might wake up, and a single airlock that never grants passage to the folks on the floor. Security is told to wait, and labs can open a few inner doors, but the big exit stays tied to the same executive switch that already ran its play. So the real story at MedTech isn't a battle. It's a staff trapped inside this dystopian type of policy. Guards holding posts because a screen simply told them to. Researchers watching defense panels flicker. Receptionists stuck behind desks because they're simply told to do so. And above them, an admin terminal that made two choices back to back. Lock the building to keep it secure, then clear the way for the people at the top. After that, the entries stop. Not because things were resolved, but because the last people with access were gone, and everyone left was still waiting for a green light that never came. The logs from Satellite Station Olivia describe one of the last calm mornings before the bombs fell. It's just another workday, routine check-ins, maintenance, and orders from higher up. But you can see how quickly everything stops once the world changes. At first, the check-in sheet for October 22nd, 2077 lists everyone who came in that morning. Officers and sergeants signed on one after another between 5:50 a.m. and 11 a.m. Nothing strange there, just a regular duty shift at a satellite relay site in Massachusetts. These people were used to dealing with communications, signal intercepts, and classified data. The daily briefing message on the terminal is completely ordinary. It talks about new equipment upgrades coming soon, pest fumigation in the lower levels, and intel officers coming in daily because of a spike in intercepted transmissions. The only hint of growing tension is that last note. More signal traffic and more people checking classified comms. When the bomb started dropping, everything shut down pretty quickly. The satellite dish went offline, data streams failed, and the base network disconnected. Each system message lists system error and offline. That means that they lost contact with the outside world almost immediately. The military chain of command likely fell apart in seconds once the first detonations hit. The people stationed there would have been staring at dead screens, realizing they had no way to contact command. No direct messages describe panic, but the missing follow-ups say plenty. The intel room had a strict access warning, only officers and analysts were allowed in, and anyone else caught inside would face a court-martial. When everything went offline, that rule would have suddenly meant nothing. Without command orders or working comms, those soldiers were probably trapped in place, unsure whether to follow the manual or break it. From the logs, you can tell that this base wasn't a launch site, but was a communication node. Its purpose was to monitor and relay data from orbiting satellites. That meant they were among the first to detect what was happening when nuclear signals started lighting up across the network. Data stream offline isn't just a tech note, it means the satellite stopped sending back data, likely destroyed or jammed by the electromagnetic pulses that came with the detonations. So the story of Olivia is about soldiers stuck in their station, following orders that no longer made sense. They had instructions to maintain the site and protect classified systems, even after those systems were already dead. By the time the comms collapsed completely, there was no more orders to follow. Their last recorded actions were trying to connect to an offline database and opening restricted rooms that no longer mattered. In the end, the soldiers at Satellite Station Olivia would have been isolated, unable to reach anyone. They weren't killed instantly by a blast, they were cut off, watching as every system they relied on went dark, waiting for orders that never came.
John Miller wasn't trying to save the world, he was just trying to save his family. Running a salvage yard meant he spent a lot of time repairing and maintaining equipment. At some point before the war, he began working on a shelter. Cracks were sealed wherever he found them and loose pipes were tightened as he went along. He went back over fittings and joints more than once, and you can find his journal entries here. Journal entry 8-2. I've sealed up all the cracks I could find in the trailer and made sure all the pipes are clamped tight. I still need to make sure ventilation is set up correctly, but I'll save that for next week. Shelly thinks we should start telling the kids about the shelter so they know where to go in case something happens. I'm not sure they need to know quite yet though. The shelter wasn't built for comfort, it only needed to function. Ventilation became the main focus. The generator caused problems, cutting out with any warning. When that happened, the fan stopped and the trapdoor sealed shut. John knew that kind of failure couldn't happen, so he kept working on it. Journal entry 915. Okay, the ventilation is set up, but I'm having issues with the generator. It keeps shutting off for no obvious reason. Whenever the generator shuts off, the ventilation fans no longer work, which apparently vacuum seals the trap door on the shelter shut. Let's hope that doesn't happen again. Work on the shelter continued as he tried to correct the problems he found. Adjustments were made when something didn't work as expected. If the shelter failed, it wouldn't just be a construction issue. Everyone inside would be affected. By the end of October, he believed the generator and ventilation issues were resolved. Supplies were stocked and ready. John notes that the shelter was prepared and hoped it wouldn't be needed. When he decided it was time to tell the kids where to go if something happened, he kept it simple. He didn't explain why, he just told them the location. He had them repeat it until he felt confident that they would remember. Journal entry 1028. I think I figured out the generator ventilation issues. All the supplies are stocked and ready. The only thing left to do is wait and hope we don't need to use it. I was telling Shane and Kimmy about the shelter, but how do you explain a bomb shelter to a 5 and 7-year-old? I just need them to know where it's at. So I tried to get them to repeat a rhyme, hoping that it would help sink in. In the tipped over train behind Dad's shop, climb up above and drop in the top. They seemed to like the rhyme. When the bombs fell, the family went into the shelter John built. They followed the plan he prepared, the door closed, and they waited. And at some point, the ventilation stopped working. John built the shelter to protect his family. He prepared what he could and worked until he believed it was ready, but it wasn't enough to keep them alive. He didn't ignore the danger. He followed through on the plan he made, but even then, it wasn't enough.
We found a good place. Already has walls and water. Some human made a tiny room underground with many good things inside.
The backyard bunker logs feel personal in a way a lot of the other records don't. This is Wayne Turnkiss talking to his wife Bonnie like she might still hear him someday. The first entry is 3 days after the bombs fell, saying, "The boys finally cried themselves asleep. It's been 3 days since the bombs fell and everything has gone to shit. Our director up at MedTech got advance notice, and if I hadn't put that code into his terminal that forwarded his logs to me, I would have been trapped up there along with everyone else when the lockdown kicked in." He then walked to Malden to get the boys. They did exactly what he told them to before everything went bad. Michael pulled David away from the teachers, and instead of going to a vault, they hid, and Wayne is proud of that. They reached the bunker just as planes started flying overhead. Then they listened to the radio until it went dead. He could still hear gunfire outside, and Bonnie was working at a hospital when the bombs fell, and Wayne doesn't know if she's alive. He ends the entry hoping she somehow is. 2 weeks later, he writes again. Bonnie still hasn't come home. Wayne wants to go into Boston to find her, but it's too dangerous, and he can't leave the kids alone. This is all going on while David keeps asking when his mom is coming back, and Michael has stopped believing Wayne's answers. To make matters more dramatic, Wayne listens to the radio at night and hears reports of fighting in the city, and he thinks Michael overheard one of them. Wayne knows things are bad, but he keeps pretending they're not, because that's all he can do. In his logs we read, "It's been 3 months since the bombs fell. I left the bunker for the first time last night. Our plan to tap into the main from the water tower worked, but the piping took more duct tape than expected and was leaking pretty bad. We didn't have any more in the house, so I tried to sneak over to Cobb's house across the street. He was working with a construction crew in the neighborhood, so I figured he might have some. I was in Ron's den, where he'd been working on that Nuka-Cola machine, and must not have heard him over the distant gunfire and explosions. There was just that cold barrel pushed up against the back of my head suddenly. He told me to turn around slowly, and oh God, Bonnie, his face. The radiation had hit him hard. His hair was falling out and half his face looked melted. I begged him to stop, but he put the gun in my mouth and cocked back the hammer. I heard the gunshot, but when I opened my eyes, Ron was falling to the ground, and I spotted Lance from down the street up on our roof. He saw the whole thing and saved my life. Said he's got a plan and to meet him tomorrow night. Clearly a lot of shit just hit the fan, as we read. But by April, Wayne writes another message to Bonnie. Today, it's her birthday. The kids made her a cake with canned frosting, and although it didn't turn out great, it was the thought that mattered. Wayne explains that Lance and his brother Leon made it back from New York with their families after weeks on foot. They decided the neighborhood needed protection, and together they stole trucks from the Irish Pride shipyard and used them to build a wall around the area. Wayne flipped his truck and nearly crashed into a house. It took another month to finish, but they finally did it. Now they take watch shifts. The kids get to go outside again, and Wayne doesn't say things are safe, but he just says they're trying. Every log is written like a letter, hoping Bonnie might still be out there. As a true romantic, Wayne never stops talking to her. Even at the end of the world, he's still a husband and a dad trying to hold his family together. But if you spend a little time exploring, you'll actually find Bonnie's response.
Wayne, I'm leaving this message with Marcy in case you come looking for me, though I pray you don't. The military took over the hospital, and everything's gone to hell in the city. Things here, they're... It's bad, Wayne. People are dying every day, and most of the time all we can do is watch and try to make them comfortable. One of the other nurses told me she heard a radio signal that sounded like you and the boys. I don't know if it's true, if you're still out there, but we've got a way out, and I'm going to try to find you.
These marina terminals tell a small, ugly story about two people who survived the bombs and still couldn't survive each other. Eugene and Malcolm were twin brothers. They made it through the Great War and reached the marina 10 days later on November 2nd, 2077. Outside was a shit we'd expect post-bombing, with constant chaos, increased radiation exposure, and gunfire in the backdrop. But the boats were still there in sight. With the boats in sight, their plan was simple. Fix one, leave Massachusetts behind, and never look back. Now, Eugene writes first. He thinks they can actually pull it off. The boats are in decent shape, but he's annoyed by Malcolm's habits, especially the way he slurps his coffee. But he keeps saying family sticks together, and this idea matters to him, at least at the start. Malcolm's entry from the same day matches that same mood. He hates the world outside, wants out fast, knows the work will be hard, but in his mind he calls his brother uptight, but still says family sticks together. He ends his entry wanting coffee, and that detail comes up again and again. By late November, everything changes. Eugene is angry. Malcolm wants to head north while Eugene wants to go south. Eugene believes Malcolm can't fix the other boat without his help, so that gives him leverage. He starts writing with real bitterness though, calling Malcolm names and blaming him for dragging things out. The coffee slurping isn't funny anymore at this point, and it too has become personal. Malcolm's November 27th entry shows the other side. He says Eugene stopped talking to him after a fight, and now they leave notes instead of speaking. And this is all happening while we get to witness their unspoken conversation unfold. Malcolm low-key is just as stubborn. He's sure north is the right direction and calls Eugene a coward. As we can see, the bond they both talked about at the start is already breaking. But by mid-December, both brothers cross the line. Eugene writes on December 12th that Malcolm has to die. He treats it like a problem with a clean answer. The issue is he needs parts from Malcolm's boat and he wants to escape. He starts digging into Mr. Handy's safety rules and plans to turn the robots into weapons. He even calls it a birthday surprise. This is some dark shit. Malcolm, though, is thinking the same thing, and on December 17th, he writes that their birthday is tomorrow. Eugene wants to bury the hatchet, but Malcolm doesn't trust it. He plans to bury something else. He also knows how to mess with the robots, so he plans to strike first, or at least thinks he will. As we learn, Eugene acts first. The robots attack Malcolm on their birthday and they kill him. Eugene puts his brother in a coffin, sets flowers beside it, and leaves him outside the building. For a brief moment, Eugene thinks he's won since the problem is gone. He's alone but alive. Then Eugene walks back into the hangar. The Mr. Handys greet him the same way they greeted Malcolm, with the same birthday message because they have the same program behavior. Obviously, Eugene dies right there on the floor and his skeleton stays in the boathouse, next to the plan that killed them both. Against most odds, they survived the bombs. They survived the early days after the world ended and lived through the pure initial chaos. What they couldn't survive was personal pride and anger, in weeks trapped together with no way out, dwelling in their sins. The marina wasn't their escape as they had hoped it would be, it was where the end finally caught up to them.
Last time when we talked about the Museum of Freedom in Concord, we were following the story of a young woman trapped in the building after the bombs dropped, and she was terrified. But she wasn't the only one to leave a message in this place. When you step onto the top of the Museum of Freedom, it's obvious that this place wasn't a safe haven for survivors. The building is wide open and the ceiling has been torn apart by impact. A vertibird is stuck inside the building where it dropped straight through. It looks like this helicopter had a sudden fall with no recovery. The museum isn't defended and it sits directly over a civilian town. The people below are frightened and no doubt panicking in the streets. Some are even armed, and the military is nowhere to be found. The vertibird is out of commission. It won't lift and it can't reach anyone outside the area or take anyone to safety. What happened here is recorded on a log from Sergeant Michael Daly.
Personal log. United States Army Staff Sergeant Michael Daly. This past Saturday, October 23rd, while en route to West Stockbridge, a vertibird crashed into the roof of this museum. The cause? EMP following nuclear detonation. Several, in fact. From the intel I've gathered, this was a global event. The co-pilot was killed on impact. Pilot died of his injuries a day later. Day after that, Flaherty and Canaway were shot by some scared, desperate survivors. Then Brzezinski took off running. Haven't seen him since. Now, it's my turn to go AWOL, if that concept even applies anymore. My armor's fusion core is burned out, so I guess my soldering days are done. I'm heading to Boston, on foot, to see if my sister survived all this. She's got an apartment on Boylston Street. This is Mike Daly, signing out. Good luck, and God bless America. Or what's left of it.
We get a good idea of how some soldiers were dealing with the end of the world, soldiers that have been misplaced and left behind. Daly doesn't leave his position out of panic or weakness. He leaves because there's no position left to hold. He knows that the systems in place for the military are gone and backup isn't coming. It shows just how fast military structure collapsed once the bombs fell. He lost both pilots quickly, and then the scared survivors in Concord panicked and killed some of the troops in his group. He eventually was alone, scared I'm sure, but he also seems determined in my opinion. He has to give up the power armor and move on, and the first thing that he decides to do is go find his sister in Boston, on foot. We don't know what happened beyond that. This might just be one of the most perfect logs we get of a first-hand exposure to the bombs falling. You find Marlene's holotape inside Wilson Automatoys, sitting on a terminal in a building that doesn't work like it used to. This building functioned as a toy company, with rooms used for development and testing tied to its products. The recording is still there because it was stored on a developmental terminal behind security doors. What makes this holotape different is simple. The person it addresses is still alive.
Go ahead.
Hi, Daddy. When are you coming home? You work too much. I want you to read to me again. Mommy says you're helping all the horsies find good homes. Take care of them, okay? I love you. Oh, Buttercup says she loves you too. We miss you. Come home soon.
Arlen Glass is a pre-war ghoul still alive at the Slog. He works as a technician and a toy designer, using the same skills he had before the war. He has known his wife and daughter were gone since the day he tried to return home and found an irradiated crater where his house had been. What he didn't have were recordings of their voices. You can actually return Marlene's holotape to her father all these years later. Arlen listens to the recording on his terminal and then speaks to you. All he says really is that he never thought that he would hear those voices again, and he leaves it at that. Arlen has spent more than 2 centuries knowing that his family died without a goodbye. Now he knows a message existed, and he probably regrets that he wasn't there for it when it was recorded. Imagine losing a child and then hearing their voice 200 years later with a message just for you. I can't even imagine that. After that, Arlen talks about the day the bombs fell. He talks about trying to get home and what he found when he arrived. He talks about surviving when he didn't want to.
It's been so long. I never thought I'd hear their voices again. You can't imagine what this means to me.
What happened to them?
We had an apartment in Cambridge. I went to the office that morning to try to talk to Mark again. When it all happened, I tried to get back, but the city was in chaos. By the time I got home, there was only a crater. I lay down in the ruins. I just wanted to die. Instead, I woke up like this.
It's a long story, but I lost my wife and son too.
Then maybe you can understand. She was right, you know. I did work too much. And now I'll never hear her voice again. Never get to hold her. Kiss her goodnight. All I have left are the memories. And this tape as one father to another. Thank you.
After all of this, he ends up leaving the Slog. Wiseman says that Arlen moved on, maybe to make peace with himself after the recording, or maybe it was just too painful to stay in the Commonwealth, and he finally got the closure he needed. If you check back in on his workshop, you'll find a complete Giddy Up Buttercup toy and a note from Arlen. All it says is, for a child who needs it. You carry a message across more than 200 years to a man who survived all these years to hear it, but too late for it to change anything that mattered.
Eliza's journals are written by a kid through her own worldview. She's not trying to explain the world, however, she's just writing down what she sees at home on Cranberry Island before everything ends. Her first entry is from February 15th, 2077, saying, "Grandpa Pat was yelling in his sleep tonight. He's done it before, but this time it was so loud it woke me up. I saw Mom head over to make sure he's okay. Glad she remembered her coat. It looks like it's freezing out there. I heard her talking to Dad the other day about Grandpa moving in with us soon. I don't think I want him to." It sounds like Eliza doesn't like that idea. She doesn't say why, but you can tell she's uneasy around him already. A few weeks later, on March 2nd, she writes about Nathan. She says he's out by the output pipes near Grandpa's place again. When Eliza notices him and looks his way, he tells her to go back to bed. She says he looks angry all the time now. She wants to tell her mom, but doesn't, because she's afraid Nathan will make things worse for her if she does. On March 19th, the tension spreads through the whole family. Eliza hears her dad yelling at Steven after morning chores. Her dad says if Steven doesn't keep the pumps running, it'll mean more than just pipes shutting down. But Eliza's a kid and she doesn't fully understand what that means. But she knows it's serious. She hates when they fight and she just wants Steven to do what he's supposed to do so things calm down. But by May, Grandpa's behavior is impossible to ignore. Eliza comes home from stacking boxes at the dock and sees him sitting on the porch yelling at the sky. He's talking about people taking their farm and messing with the generators and reels. He keeps saying the harvest is coming. Eliza says things changed after Grandma died, and Grandpa started accusing Nathan of messing with machines, and now he's blaming the government. The fear in his head is spilling out into everything. In July, Eliza writes a short entry saying she misses Grandma. She says the family doesn't argue as much when she was alive, and Grandpa was different. It's one of the only times Eliza directly says she misses someone, and it says a lot about how broken things feel now. In August, Grandpa is still talking about government agents coming after them. Eliza's dad tries to calm him by talking about insurances and a will they finalized. Eliza ends up asking Nathan what insured means, and he tells her not to worry and says it means they're safe. Then he tells her she should be excited about what's in Grandpa's will. But again, she's a kid, so that comment goes right over her head. She admits she doesn't understand what any of them are talking about. Her last entry, however, is dated back on October 22nd, 2077, the day before the bombs fall. Eliza is excited. She's about to head to the mainland for a Halloween party in Bar Harbor. All her friends are there and she's hoping that some kid named Gregory might show up. Nathan was supposed to take her, but no one knows where he is. He's been gone a lot lately, and Eliza says her mom will probably take her instead. She's already thinking about writing in her journal the next day about how fun the party was. Unfortunately, there is no next entry. Eliza never gets to write about the party. The next day is, of course, October 23rd, when the world ends. All that fear, arguing, all those strange warnings from Grandpa about the government, none of it mattered anymore. Eliza's journals stop with a kid excited about costumes and friends, not knowing she's writing her last normal thought before everything disappears. But one thing's for certain, her grandpa sounds absolutely goated. The employee tunnel logs from Nuka World tell the story of people who followed the rules and prepared ahead of time, but somehow still paid for it slowly. As mentioned by the name of these logs, these weren't tourists but were workers who knew something bad was coming and tried to survive together under Kitty Kingdom. Quick side note, can you guys imagine shit hitting the fan while you're in Epcot? That's a crazy place to be during the end of times. I digress. Dean Morris writes the first entry and notes that the bombs finally fell. He says they followed quote-unquote the plan. Staff tried to calm the park visitors, but panic took over. They couldn't save everyone, but they dragged a few people into the employee tunnels before things got worse. Oswald and Rachel had already stocked the tunnels with food, seeds, tools, lumber, and water hooked to the park pumps. They had almost everything they needed. The one thing missing was weapons though. And yes, without that, they're likely fucked. That was Mitchell's job though, and nobody knew if he was alive. Dean tells everyone to stay calm and wait it out. Now, about a week later, Mitchell shows up. And he's alive. He drives in with a semi-truck full of guns, explosives, medicine, chemicals, and supplies. He says he's been collecting everything they need to defend Kitty Kingdom. Suspiciously enough, he has blood on his shirt, but nobody asks questions. Dean admits Mitchell is dangerous, but right now they need him now more than ever. I mean, he is the guy with the guns after all. So they seal off the service tunnels that connect to the rest of the park and start talking about barricading the gates if things don't improve. Then the storms come. Dean describes something none of them expected. A massive green storm rolls in from the east, spinning like a tornado with glowing lightning. People don't even have time to run, and some are pulled straight into it and they never come back. Fallout from Boston rains down on the park, and after that, everyone gets sick. And as the weeks pass, people start dying. The ones who live start changing. Then he realizes something. The survival training videos never covered this part. Time jumps forward by a huge amount, and Dean says they've been alive for over 100 years. Their bodies adapted to radiation. They stopped feeling sick, but their bodies changed shape. Some people handled it better than others, but of course, things start getting even worse. Mitchell changes first, then Herman, then they stop talking and they shuffle and they growl. If anyone tries to restrain them, they attack. At this point, Rachel believes it's an illness. The rest call it the affliction. Dean says he's scared it's going to take everyone, and Fran Fowler's logs fill in the rest. Her first entry talks about their first real attack when raiders rush the park. Fran freezes when someone comes at her boyfriend Evan from behind, and Mitchell kills the attacker instantly. Evan survives, but he's angry with Fran for freezing. Fran is upset because the world has ended and she's still dealing with relationship fights. Personally, I'd be pissed too if someone froze in my time of need, but with a name like Fran, I would expect her to freeze too. Months later, Fran sounds exhausted and radiation storms keep rolling in, and now 23 people are dead. Her skin is falling apart like a brittle pine cone being stroked. Her hair is coming out in clumps while she types. Evan loses all of his, and Fran can barely stomach to look at him. They fight some more, so Evan moves his things into the clock tower. Fran wonders if she's becoming something awful, and she wonders if all of them are. But then one night, an alarm wakes everyone up. The water intake is contaminated and glowing, but Fran shrugs it off. She's heard rumors about a reactor in the bottling plant, and she jokes that if radiation hasn't killed her yet, more won't matter. So she goes back to sleep. But then another attack hits, bigger than before. The mob nearly reaches the castle. While people are fighting, Fran realizes something. They've survived radiation, but raiders haven't. She runs into the tunnels and turns on the park's mist sprayers, and then radiation floods the area. The attackers drop fast and the park is safe once again. If you haven't guessed by now, by the way, this is a romantic novella. So Evan kisses her when he finds out it was her idea. Things aren't quite fixed between them, but it's better than nothing. The final entry, however, is a bit heavier. The affliction is spreading faster, and as I mentioned, Herman is gone. He knew it was coming, and so did everyone else. Fran says they've survived storms, hunger, attacks, and more for over a century. But this isn't something they can shoot or barricade against. She doesn't know if her anger is grief or a sign that she's next. What we can gather from this is that these people were badasses until the very end. They lived long past the bombs falling, and they built a system that worked. They defended each other, and in the end, what broke them was something far worse than raiders. It came from inside their own bodies that nobody knew how to stop.
The terminals inside the Dunwich building were never meant to hold personal records. They were office terminals used by the company, but one system used auto-dictation software made by Pagsoft, a voice-to-text program that converted speech into stored entries. Audio was saved automatically until the system's memory filled. Because of that, the machine stored recordings without any filtering or review. A workplace memo is logged. It's a routine company message tied to the sales staff and company performance. The coughing heard in the recording is simply part of someone speaking while unwell. It says, N18-2077, coughing, memo to sales staff. In recognition of an exemplary quarter, Mr. Statham has authorized me to release sales staff early for the holidays. It was no easy task to release a new acoustic borer to a market used to conventional bit bore drilling systems. But thanks to your hard work and unintelligible, acoustic bore drills are setting a new standard in the excavation industry. More coughing. Thanks to your many private sales and procurement of government contracts, we'll all be in the black for the foreseeable future. Happy holidays from Mr. Statham and Dunwich Borers. Now get home to your families, with an applause. Nothing much to note here really, but now you kind of understand how the auto-dictation works. Well, the next two entries are dated October 23rd, 2077, the day the bombs fell. Both entries show mostly random letters, but we can either assume that this is the bombs erupting or maybe the building collapsing in parts, possibly the sound waves. The software issues warnings about recording in a sustained low frequency environment and then powers itself off automatically. After that, the machine goes offline. When it comes back online, it's the year 2134. More than 50 years have passed. The building is still standing and the equipment still operates. 3/27/2134. Unintelligible. What the hell was that? Doesn't matter, doesn't matter. Deep breathing. Where is it? Where? An impact sound, paper crumbling. There. More paper crumple. Safe and sound. Jesus, they bled so much, but I kept it clean. Clean. Shit, more. Gotta move. Gotta keep it safe. 4/27/2134. Deep breathing. My skin. Barely any left. One of them now, but they know I still have it. Stay back. Back you. More deep breathing. That's close enough. You and you too, over there. Yes. One of us, Ugg Qualtoth, is returned. Clearly this person being recorded is going through ghoulification, joining the numerous other ghouls we can find in the Dunwich building. But near the end, you do see a name spoken, Ugg Qualtoth. Then we get to one last dictation, 5/1/2134. There's liquid dripping. Ugqual Toth, Ugqual Toth. I came, back this time deep temple. Screaming, twisting, an impact sound, no light, no flesh. Deep temple born, deep temple died. Ugqual Toth again. Returned, retribution. Notice to user, internal memory capacity reached. Pagsoft LLC recommends PagMem LLC for all your data storage needs. Please contact your administrator for details. Once the memory limit is reached, no additional data is saved. I find it interesting to read the logs of an auto-dictation program working the moments the bomb fell, and then recording a man's descent into ghoulification. But even more than that, insanity. Finding yourself in this dark and hopeless place and losing your mind would have been one of the worst ways to go. When the bombs fell, he was 13 years old. Politics and war didn't mean anything to him yet. What mattered to him was that something terrible happened shortly after he had done some things that he knew were wrong. Adults had told him that bad behavior would lead to bad outcomes. His father had said things like that before. To a kid, that will mess them up. This kid grew up believing the end of the world was his fault. This is the story of a boy named Colonel who wound up in the Appalachian wastes after the bombs. You'll find his holotape in the steeple of the Flatwoods Church.
Hi. Dasa asked me if I would talk about, how I got here. She asked everybody, so I said okay. My name's Colonel, and I'm 13 years old. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything. The bombs and the messed up people and the cows with two heads, all of it. I was bad. Just bad. I cheated on my spelling test. I kicked Chip Wilkins in the shins until he cried. I pushed Rosie McCloy down the stairs. I just wanted to say I'm sorry about everything. Because my dad said if I wasn't this way, the bad things wouldn't happen. I haven't seen Daddy since the bombs, and I guess he left because of that too. It's okay. I'm trying to be good now, though. I'm not old enough to be a volunteer, but Dasa said I could help collect food and water, so I'm getting better, I promise. And, Daddy, if you're listening, I promise I won't be bad anymore, so you can come back now. Okay? Okay. Bye.
It's heartbreaking to hear this young boy believe that he was the one that caused the bombs to drop. His father made him believe that he was a curse, and yet Colonel still wishes to see his father again, believing that he can do good and that it will bring him back. Time passed and that kid survived. 10 years went by, and during that time, Dasa found him and brought him in. The responders didn't treat him like a problem. They gave him structure and let him help. He wasn't old enough to be a volunteer yet, so he just collected food and water. From there, he tried to live in a better way. Not perfect, just better than before. When people needed help, he stayed. When kids lost their families, he made sure they weren't alone. That became his role. Later, he said his father had died in the war. That didn't change what happened though, but it changed how he talked about it. He stopped focusing on what couldn't be undone and focused on what he could still do.
Boy, it's been like 10 years since I did one of these. Dasa said she lost my original one though. Bummer. My name is Colonel, so hey, hi. Let's see. Bombs fell when I was a kid. My dad died in the war, you know, so this is all pretty normal. My story is, I guess, boring. So Dasa found me when I was 13 or so. She brought me the responders. They taught me everything. I became a volunteer. It was great. For the past 5 years, I've been a responder myself. I help kids who lost their families. I get them safe, trained. Just act like a big brother. Every year we find fewer people though, so I don't know. Things are not good out there. Just getting simple food and water is tough. And the Brotherhood, well, we thought that would be different. We thought everything would be different though. So anyway, maybe in 10 years, Dasa will ask me to do another one of these survivor stories. Till then, peace, Appalachia.
For 5 years, he had been a responder. He helped kids get safe and trained. He acted like a big brother because he knew what it was like to grow up without one. Each year, fewer people were found. Getting food and water was tough. They thought the Brotherhood would be different, but that didn't work out the way they hoped. No kid should grow up thinking they caused the end of the world. At the same time, he found people who were trying to help instead of take. He found a way to be better than the kid who thought he ruined everything. You can find his body where you find the second holotape. He might not have made it, and most of these stories do end in tragedy, but this one to me shows hope. With all the odds stacked against him and how he was treated, he ended up becoming a responder and someone willing to help others.
Raymond's journal starts the day before the bombs fell, and I like this one because it feels more nostalgic than some of the other holotapes we find in the wasteland. Raymond was a mall Santa. Not just any Santa though. He believed he was the best one around. On October 22nd, 2077, he calls them all asking when his Santa job starts. Now let's just take a second. It's October, and he's asking when his Santa job starts. He's already a little sus or a little slow. Anyways, they dodge the question and they say they aren't hiring a Santa at all. Raymond knows that's a lie, and his friend Tommy tells him the real reason. They think Raymond smells like whiskey and takes the job way too seriously. Raymond is furious. He says people don't come to see Santa, they come to see him. He talks about training all year and plans to show up in full costume the next day to remind them who they're dealing with. See, I told you this would feel nostalgic. The alcoholic Santa is something we've all seen in a movie before, so he feels familiar. The next day is of course October 23rd. Raymond goes to the mall ready to yell at the manager. Then everything changes as the sirens go off. The radio starts warning people. The building shakes from God knows what outside. Then Raymond realizes the bombs have fallen. He panics, shoves past people, and locks himself inside a concrete storage room. He hears chaos outside but refuses to leave. His anger about the job disappears instantly, and survival is the only thing that matters. 2 months later, on December 14th, Raymond is still alive. He's been hiding inside the mall, eating whatever food he can find and keeping to himself. Radiation has done something to him and his skin is breaking out. His hands look burned and raw, but instead of feeling weak, he says he feels better than ever before. Strong, confident even. Someone tries to break in and steal food, and Raymond kills him with a plastic candy cane. After that, he decides nobody can be trusted. Now, at this point of the story, Raymond is absolutely goated. I mean, a plastic candy cane kill shot, that's pretty tough to beat. But now he starts to change how he sees the place. The mall isn't just shelter anymore. He calls it Santa's workshop and that Christmas is coming.
Winter is coming.
Raymond, of course, is excited. He talks about joy in the air even while the world outside is gone. By this point, Raymond is no longer thinking like a normal person though. Then the journal jumps forward in a huge way. December 20th, 2184. Raymond is still alive. He doesn't understand how, but he decides it must be fate. He says it's been 107 years of Christmas and declares himself the one true immortal Santa Claus. There's zero doubt left in his mind. He fully believes it, and to be honest, I'm starting to too. He could easily be a post-apocalyptic Santa at this point. Just think about it. He's been around for a century claiming to be the best Santa, and with 90% of everyone gone from before, he could easily be looked at as an icon like this guy from Venice Beach. The last entry is from October 12th, 2287. Raymond is still alive after more than 2 centuries, and super mutants have taken over Fallon's department store. Raymond usually shoots anyone who enters, or he sends his guard. Someone he calls, you guessed it, Rudolph. But the super mutants are different. He knows better than to fight them. He retreats to the loading dock behind the building and waits, angry and frustrated. He says a garage isn't fit for Santa Claus and that he wants his workshop back and knows he needs a plan. Raymond survived the bombs by accident. He survived the years after by force and paranoia. Over time, the role he played before the war became his entire identity and actually manifested into reality. He became the Santa he always knew existed from within him. By the end of the holotape, Raymond isn't waiting for Christmas to come back because he believes it never left.
GNN, the Galaxy News Network. It was one of the main ways people learned what was happening before the war. If you lived in the States, this is the kind of broadcast you'd hear playing in homes, offices, and waiting rooms. When resources started running out and tensions rose, GNN became the filter between public and reality. We can find a broadcast disc in the Sierra Army Depot, and this holodisc is a collection of those broadcasts, pulled from different years and saved together. Someone in the military thought these reports mattered enough to keep them on record. These were the stories people heard while prices climbed and riots were spreading. I wanted to just read the last few broadcasts. because they give us a perfect idea of how the media was handling the war and situations going on right before the bombs. Broadcast March 30th, 2076. Today, the president ordered the Pacific Fleet to the Poseidon Deep Sea Oil Derrick, located at the secret location out in the Pacific. He cited concerns over that military exercises staged by the Chinese fleet are unacceptably close to our strategic oil reserves. The Chinese government denied any hostile intentions. A recent poll suggests that 54% of GNN viewers think that the president is using this as a diversionary tactic to take the public's eye off the president's recent admission to having multiple extramarital affairs with campaign staffers. Our poll also suggests that 70% don't care about these affairs and are happy with the way the president is running the country. A whopping 60% also think he should keep having these affairs, if that's what it takes to keep the country running smoothly. Broadcast October 10th, 2077. War. A state of war is declared as China invades the United States by way of Alaska. Protests by the US fall on deaf ears as the UN Council chooses to ignore this blatant act of aggression. The President of the United States is calling on you to help defend our country against those that would do harm to her. You are urged to go down to your local recruiting office and join the armed forces. Uncle Sam needs you. For justice, for freedom, and mom's apple pie. Broadcast October 22nd, 2077. And this would be a day before the bombs fell. Thanks to the brave souls of the armed forces and our newly developed power armored combat suits, US forces have pushed back the Chinese invaders. Crippled by lack of fuel, US forces have pushed the invaders back to their home capital of Beijing. It's really crazy to read the first-hand news broadcast going on right before the bombs.
Aircom, we have multiple flashpoints on horizon. Come back. Air Command, USN 350 requesting landing vector. Have 0 ceiling visibility and low on state. Somebody get me a landing clearance. State 1+10 to splash. Have 0 read on outer marker. This is USN 350. I'm blind out here. Attempting emergency landing over water. INS pinger active on distress band. Flaps up, descent to 8 cherubs. 3 green over. 5 cherubs, tree line up. Throttle easy on 4 lights. Prepping to pull the loud handle.
The jet didn't come down under stable conditions. Visibility was gone and fuel levels were running low. As the flight pushed toward Point Lookout, onboard systems were struggling and fuel margins kept shrinking. The pilot reported multiple flashpoints along the horizon. Whatever plan existed before that moment no longer mattered. The priority became finding any way to get the aircraft down before fuel ran out. The impact area sits in a bog, where deep mud holds the aircraft in place. The jet drove into the ground hard enough to bury large sections of the fuselage. Skeletons are found around the wreckage. Several of the bodies are still armed, matching what was carried at the time. The pilot ejected before the crash. The parachute caught in a tree east of the impact site, leaving the body hanging above the ground, with their rifle landed below out of reach. Near the cockpit, you'll find a shovel and the black box recorder that were left. That recorder holds the final transmissions from the flight, the one you heard at the beginning of this section. The jet went down hard in the swamp, and right away it would probably create a focal point. It's loud and visible from far away. In a place like Point Lookout, that draws a lot of people in. Locals trying to understand what just fell out of the sky. They wouldn't know what the jet is carrying or why it crashed. The skeletons with axes might mean they likely approached the wreck to scavenge it. Metal, fuel, supplies, anything useful would matter right after the bombs. They were trying to get inside. The crash site would have become dangerous fast. Radiation from the jet, exposure from the swamp, and the early onset of ghoulification would turn people aggressive and confused. Once that starts, coordination breaks down. If several people were already there with axes, fear and panic would take over. At that point, the tools meant for cutting into the wreck become weapons used on each other. It seems like this might have just been a swamp folk bum rush. People converged on the wreck, armed themselves with tools, and tore each other apart while trying to claim whatever they thought the jet held. The black box gives us the perspective of a pilot caught out right when the bombs dropped. If you're claustrophobic, you might want to avoid this one. The day this woman got trapped at Fallon's started in the building, and it ended in the basement where the blasts hit. She didn't make it out. She went down into the basement jewelry area and into a hidden room that was built for valuables, not for people. The hidden room is behind a bookcase in the basement. There's a red button under one of the jewelry counters that opens the way in. Once she was inside, she was cut off from the rest of the store. She survived the explosions, but she couldn't get back out. She waited, listening for anyone in the building. She couldn't see what was happening outside the room, and she didn't have a way to check. That's the problem with a hidden little space like this. It'll keep you out of danger for a moment, but it also locks you away from help. It was a storage space. Inside were 6 locked safes and a ham radio. There were no windows down there and no clear way to track time. She kept trying to get help the only way she could, the radio.
Hello? Anyone? I'm trapped in the jewelry safe in Fallon's. If anyone is out there, please help. What's going on out there? I felt the ground shake and nothing since. It's been 4 days, I think. If you can hear this, please let me out. There's a button underneath one of the counters in the jewelry department. Please. I'm so thirsty. Please. Hurry.
This has been a pre-recorded message. Message repeats in 3 seconds.
The recording date is October 27, 2077. She says she went into the room when the blast hit, which puts her trapped there for about 4 days before she made the broadcast. The message isn't live. It's just looping and repeating the same call out again and again. Nobody answers. She died there in that hidden basement room, all alone with no food or water. You can find the place later, and the ham radio is still in the secret room, her skeleton along with it. I can't begin to imagine what it would have been like for her. That's some scary shit.
If any of you have changed your mind, it's time to go. James will see you out. No one. Very well.
This club was built for people who thought the world would always bend around them. It was a private club for powerful men, not something an everyday layman could join. I'm talking presidents, senators, governors, judges, their sons, nepo babies, and room enough for a lucky few handpicked guests who could afford a fee so high it filtered out almost everyone else. This all came at a small lump sum of 500 grand. Also, this was a gentleman's club, so no women are listed. It's a closed circle that expected doors to stay open for them forever. It's effectively the Bohemian Grove. In October of 2077, life inside the club still followed its normal routine. Members argued about cigars imported from Canada. They sat through 7-course dinners with politicians. They drank wine while talking about Asia as a threat, calling it the Red Menace, like it was just another theme night. While the rest of the country worried about war, these guys gave an iota of a fuck less. The calendar here tells you everything. On October 21st, a wine event was focused on Asia. 2 days later, the bombs fell. After that date, the schedule changes. A new event gets added on October 24th, a memoriam gala with free food and an open bar, only for members who were still able to make it, of course. Then a final toast planned for midnight. That line is actual gold though, members still able to make it. It's my kind of twisted humor because we of course know some were already gone, some were trapped somewhere else, some probably didn't survive the first strikes. Rather than cancel, the club simply pivoted and adjusted with the times, and they continued to move forward. They planned one last gathering for whoever could still walk through the door. Now, this place wasn't a bunker. It was a place to sit, drink, and say goodbye together. The people inside likely believed help would come for them, or that status still mattered. Or maybe even that being important once meant being protected later. The wording feels calm as there's no panic in the text. Rather than fear, we get notes of logistics. The calm tone in these tapes always reminded me of ignorance mixed with sadness. It shows how disconnected these people were from what was actually happening outside. While cities burned and people ran for cover, the club stayed focused on comfort and tradition, but it also felt like a final send-off. Now, aside from the personal aspect that we just covered, we also get notes that the safe in the club still worked. Locks still checked clearance and systems still responded. So even as the world fell apart, the mechanisms that protected wealth and secrets stayed intact. Whatever was stored in that safe mattered enough to protect, even until the end. This club didn't leave behind a goodbye note, but it did leave a calendar. A list of events and a quiet update added after the world ended. It shows a group of people who lived their entire lives behind closed doors and decided to face the end the same way, together and insulated, maybe convinced that history would remember them as important right up to the last drink. This holotape is about people who survived the start of the war only to be targeted by their own country. Although some survivors were fighting monsters or scavenging ruins, plenty of others had to deal with other demons. Some were running from soldiers with paperwork and orders already signed long before the world ended. This is one of those tapes that is fun to stumble upon as it really acts like a subtle world builder. Sometimes I find holotapes and I don't fully understand them on my first playthroughs, or I'm so focused on a quest that I don't spend the time to listen to these things. But when I came across this one, I thought it was refreshing because we actually get to hear the horror of a nuclear bomb going off in the background, and the immediate reactions of those who had to experience its terror.
George! George! You hear that? Listen!
I don't hear anything.
Attention citizens, imminent. Please exit. Next convenience. Thank you for your information.
What'd it say?
Something about convenience? Probably just an ad for Red Rocket. We get them all. The hell was that? Was that a...
Nuclear strike. It said nuclear strike.
No. Jesus Christ. We need to get out of here.
Out of here? Are you crazy? We need shelter. This is shelter.
This isn't a vault, Luann. We don't know if this place will hold.
You don't have the slightest idea what's happening up there.
Get off me, Luann. I'm leaving.
Jesus, George, don't... Fuck! George! Come back!
Attention citizens, nuclear strike imminent. Please exit the area at your earliest convenience. Thank you for your cooperation.
Oh God. Oh my God.
The people working beneath Arctos Pharma were part of a classified operation deep underground. The lab sat far below the facility, separated from the rest of the area. Daily life there focused on research tasks and keeping the lab running. What was happening beyond the walls wasn't something they had direct access to. When the bombs fell, they were already inside the lab. They didn't see what happened above. The facility itself stayed intact after the initial event, and for a time, nothing reached them down there. Whatever was happening elsewhere remained unknown. Time passed without clear answers. No information reached them that explained what had happened. Eventually, that lack of knowledge became a problem on its own. The group decided to send people upward to find out what was going on.
To anyone out there, this is Dr. Christina Bryan. I'm a botanist employed at a classified laboratory deep underneath the Arctos Pharma facility. We were down here when the bombs fell. We held out as long as we could before sending people to the surface to find out what the hell happened. That was a mistake. There was nothing up there except death and these ghoulish creatures. They got down here somehow and started taking us out one by one. Our last remaining technician tried to program the security force to recognize these creatures as a threat, but it seems he disabled their targeting parameters instead. They started killing everything. 8 of us have locked ourselves in the lower generator room. If you hear this, please come and save us before it's too late.
There was death above, along with ghoulish creatures, and those creatures later found a way down into the lab. Once that happened, the underground space was no longer safe. As it got worse, one of the remaining technicians tried to use the lab security force to stop the creatures. The attempt failed. Instead of targeting the threat, the system began attacking indiscriminately. 8 people were left locked underground, with no clear way out and the hostile creatures still inside the facility. After the message was recorded, there's no further record of what happened in the lab. The facility stayed sealed and no response is documented. The Arctos Pharma complex is still standing. It makes you wonder what their last days looked like. Jeff Nakamura's story doesn't start on a happy day, even though the holotape we find is called The Big Day. When he sits on that bench near Summersville, he's already thinking about the memory of what he lost. He volunteered for a mission to Pleasant Valley because he was bored and wanted excitement. He later admitted he was young and stupid for that choice. Less than an hour after leaving Charleston, everything went wrong. The dam failed and the river tore through the city. Jeff and the others looked on as the water washed half of Charleston away. Every friend he had was gone that day. Jeff survived, and that stayed with him. For a long time, Jeff felt like surviving wasn't fair. He says he should have died with his friends. When he talks about his duties with the responders, he doesn't explain how it made him feel, only that people depended on him and that the work mattered. Meeting Amy Carey changed what Jeff thought about next. He says meeting her gave him a reason to want to be alive. The bench looks out over the floodlands that Jeff talks about. That was where he decided to ask Amy a question. Rebuilding was really important to him.
Oh, wait. Is that... Did you brought a holotape recorder?
Oh, yeah. There's something I wanted to document. Don't worry. It's nothing weird. I promise. Anyway, you asked where I like to go to be alone and think, and here we are.
When I was a student at VTU, I always thought Summersville was one of the prettiest towns I'd ever seen. It was quaint, you know? Old-fashioned. Now it's lost all of its charm for me. I just see a sad, decaying place filled with ghosts of a forgotten world. What draws you here? Is it the silence?
The view, actually. You can see the floodlands perfectly from here.
The mudflats. Why? There's nothing there. It's a ruin.
Because I never want to forget how lucky I am to be alive. I volunteered for the mission to Pleasant Valley because I was bored and wanted some excitement in my life. I know, I was young and stupid. We weren't even an hour outside the city when we heard the blast from the dam. We looked on as the river washed half of Charleston away. I lost every friend I had on that day, and for a long time, I felt like it was unfair that I survived. Like, I should have died with them. But that all changed on the day I met you, Amy. You gave me a reason to want to be alive. That's why I wanted to ask you.
Jeff, don't. I know what you want to say, but now isn't the time. I don't know if it ever will be. I just can't think about that right now. It's not that I don't care about you, but I have my work on the environmental monitoring program, and you've got your duties to the responders. People are counting on us to be selfless, to put their needs ahead of ours.
I know, but part of rebuilding the world is, well, having families again. And I think that's an important responsibility too. Besides, why even bother trying to survive if there aren't things worth living for? Look, if this is too soon for you, then I'll wait until you're ready. Just promise me you'll tell me if you change your mind.
Okay, I promise.
Amy stopped him and said it wasn't the right time. She explained that people depended on both of them and that they needed to be selfless. Jeff said he understood that and that he would wait. You can find the ring and the hat on the bench where the recording was made. The holotape ends there. Maybe the big day means something else entirely.
Professor John Malleus's recordings from Vault 92 are calm at first, almost proud. He was the lead scientist and the vault was filled with some of the best musicians in the world. That wasn't an accident. Vault Tech wanted people with trained ears and strong focus. The experiment was straightforward initially. Play extremely low frequency white noise through the Vault's sound system and see how the human mind reacts over time. He starts by saying everything is working and the loudspeakers begin to play the noise in regular intervals. The soundproof studios help control the tests and he even compliments Vault Tech for picking musicians, calling it a smart move. At this stage, he sees the residents as test subjects, not people in danger. The next log begins to sound more excited. About a third of the Vault's population is slipping into trance-like states.
I'm a bit encouraged by the latest batch of data. Seems that 33% of the subjects are now lapsing into a trance-like state on occasion.
While in those states, they can be influenced. He talks about planting tiny behaviors, scratching an ear, fixing hair, and says it works every time and that he's happy with the results. He thinks they're onto something big, but just how big is too big. As with everything related to Vault Tech, everything breaks. One resident with no history of violence snaps and kills 3 people. Security has to fire over 20 shots just to stop him. Now, the doctor is shaken because this man was one of the best at receiving implanted instructions. That connection scares him, but he doesn't fully understand nor grasp it yet. Obviously, the killings don't stop. Over the next month, 12 more people attack and kill others. The violence is extreme to say the least. These were artists, performers, people who lived for music and likely had immense intelligence and empathy. Now, they're tearing others apart with their bare hands. The professor starts questioning himself. He doesn't know how his work led here, but by the 5th recording, over half the vault is acting savage. Malleus believes the noise woke something deep in their minds, and he begins to blame himself for moving too fast. More than 35 people are dead at this point, and the vault is collapsing from the inside. Then he learns the truth, saying, "I can't believe what I've discovered. Just before he died, one of the security team members told me everything. The Overseer has been implanting these murderous intentions in the entire vault population without my knowledge. Using the loudspeakers in the dorms instead of just the studios, he subjected everyone to the white noise as they slept. He then implanted combat suggestions he claims came from Vault Tech itself. He must be completely insane. No observation, no controls. I'm gonna have to confront him now and make him pay for what he's done. Half the vault is dead, the other half fighting for its life. Good luck to all of us, and may God have mercy on our souls." Malleus realizes the vault wasn't about research anymore, but was about control. Reuben wanted soldiers, people who could be programmed to fight without question. Unfortunately, half the vault is already dead while the rest are attacking each other, which is when Malleus recorded his final message, knowing things are beyond saving. Outside the recordings though, we learn what likely happened next. The professor tried to end the experiment and open the vault so people could escape. Reuben saw him as a threat, and thus, in his own logs, the Overseer writes that the professor was an obstacle and needed to be removed. The professor's attempts to do the right thing likely got him killed. See, Vault 92 wasn't destroyed by the bombs, unfortunately, because if it were, it would have ended the suffering sooner. This place was destroyed by the sound and control that started it. 92 learned a tough lesson on the consequences of treating human minds like tools. The professor went in believing he was helping his country, and he died realizing he helped create a slaughter. Executive Order 99066 was issued before the bombs ever fell, which is crucial to know for this one. Ironically, this order was planned during the Resource Wars, while the government was still fully in control, yet panic law was made after the world ended. So this order gave legal cover to imprison Chinese and Chinese American people inside the United States. Now, the name of this holotape is internment orders, so I think you already know that they weren't imprisoned for doing anything nefarious, but just because of who they were during a war with China. The military handled it directly in some cases, and in others they hired private military contractors. That's why the internment order holotapes exist at all. At first glance, you might think it was written by an officer at a base, but if you take the time to read the notes, you'd find it was written for a contractor doing paid work, with a small warning that sharing it would count as treason. The names on this list weren't random though. I'm not good with pronouncing Chinese, so I'll post them on the screen here. These were people already flagged under Executive Order 99066. What happened at this point was families being split up. Children were even listed alongside the adults. Nobody was told where they were going, only that they were being relocated to a WRA camp. The order allowed non-lethal force if needed, which means resistance was expected. People obviously didn't go quietly, but the deadline for delivery was October 29, 2077, which was 6 days after the bombs fell. Even after nuclear fire hit the country, the government still expected these transports to continue. The 9-to-5 grind was real, and paperwork and schedules still mattered. Ironically, these people mentioned still mattered less than the order itself. The internment truck is found abandoned on the highway. Something stopped it. Maybe the driver ran. Maybe the road was destroyed. Maybe the bombs made finishing the job impossible. Whatever happened, the fact that the truck never arrived doesn't erase the intent. Executive Order 99066 is a direct mirror of real history, and Fallout doesn't hide that at all. It's modeled after Executive Order 9066 from World War II, which is when Japanese Americans were imprisoned by their own government. In Fallout's world, history repeated itself, and it quickly escalated.
By the time the survivor reached the roof of the Gwinnett Brewery, weeks had already passed since the bombs fell. The restaurant had been the place they first used as shelter. It was enclosed and Melissa was there with him. His eyesight had started to recover by then, but his hearing was still gone. He had to rely mostly on what he could see. Every movement around him depended on his eyes catching it. When the looters forced their way inside, everything went to hell fast. Melissa ran for the utility closet and locked herself in. He didn't follow. Instead, he tore open a pipe grating in the craft wing and pushed through the building until he reached the main brewery. He moved as best he could using the vision he had left. But reaching the roof wouldn't solve anything. It just put him in a different kind of problem. Once he entered the roof and secured it, there was no simple way back down. The space was a small control area, not a living space. There was no food stored there and no clear exit he could reach. Time passed, and with no hearing, he couldn't pick up any activity in the rest of the building. The beer was the only thing available, and at least it was something he could drink while he waited. He recorded this log while he still had the strength to do it. Trapped. It's been a few weeks since the bombs fell. My eyesight has come back a bit, but my hearing is still gone. Everything has gone to shit. We holed up in the restaurant for a while, but when looters broke in yesterday, Melissa locked herself in the utility closet. I managed to pop the grating off the pipe in the craft wing and get out to the main brewery. But now I'm trapped up here on the roof. I don't know how much longer I can hold out. He died inside the control niche, sealed in place, with the door still shut. The area would stay undisturbed for the next 210 years. His remains are still there, in the small space where he wrote that last entry. He lived through the blasts and the looters that came afterward, but what ended him was being stuck above the building with no way out. The birth of the Brotherhood of Steel is actually the story of one of the bomb survivors, surprisingly enough, a man named Roger Maxson, who left diary entries during the attacks. His story is usually told in the perspective of this great leader, who rose up through the ashes to hate the things he saw and want justice for the atrocities, which is all true. But when I read them, I also see the desperation of a soldier, who is entirely confused by all the events he's witnessing, desperate for answers and terrified about who he served and discovering it was all a lie. October 10th, 2077. I, Roger Maxson, Captain, serial number 072389, have started this log because it doesn't look good for any of us, and I'd like people to know what really happened here. All hell broke loose when we finally discovered what those scientist bastards were up to. The colonel has locked himself in his office and seems to be having some sort of breakdown. The men are screaming for blood. They're looking to me for answers, and I'm not sure what to do. Someone has to do something though, before this place sinks into an anarchist bloodbath. The first entry is happening at a place called the Mariposa Military Base, only a few days before the bombs. Captain Roger Maxson and his unit were stationed here to secure government and military secrets, but they weren't told what those were, and then they discovered what they were doing. The scientists there were working with the forced evolutionary virus and human testing. They found that these people were being exposed to the virus against their will, and that research had crossed a line. When he talked about the colonel locking himself away, he's talking about the commanding officer at Mariposa, who basically lost control of the situation when Maxson and his soldiers rebelled. Maxson's men were obviously disgusted and pissed off, and they wanted retaliation against the scientists for what they were doing. October 12th, 2077. Every time we get a report from higher up, things get worse here. The war is going in a very bad direction, and this place is about to go into full mutiny, with all the chaos that entails. I stopped one of the men from executing a scientist today, and demanded that we interrogate them to find out what their orders were. October 13th, 2077. I killed a man today. I was interrogating Chief Scientist Anderson, and he was giving me the full details of their inhuman experiments. He said his orders came from the government, but I didn't buy it. He started screaming about how he was following orders, how he was a military man, and I just shot him. I tell myself it was to keep him from causing a full mutiny among the men, but I'm not so sure. Maxson is getting desperate here, and you start to feel for him. He really is stuck between a rock and a hard place. His unit is losing faith in the command structure, and really the government. The war is going to hell, there's FEV human testing, of course these people would want blood. Maxson is just trying to hold things together, stopping his men from executing scientists on the spot, and choosing to instead interrogate them so he can understand who gave the orders in the first place. He questions Chief Scientist Anderson about the experiments. Anderson says the work was authorized from the top levels of the government. The rage builds up, emotions are running high, and Maxson shot and killed him. He told himself it was to save the base from full mutiny, but in my mind, I think a lot of people would have done the same. Seeing and hearing about the experiments would have been horrible. October 15th, 2077. I tried again to speak to the colonel through the door, but he seems to have completely lost touch with reality. I broke down the door with several men just in time to watch him blow his head off. Right before he pulled the trigger, he said he was sorry. October 18th, 2077. By killing the egghead, I seem to have confirmed my position as leader of the men. They follow me without question now. The interrogations invariably end up as being executions. Shellman held out the longest, but the end result was the same. Her arguments about her orders were a bit too specific to be completely made up. I'm getting a real bad feeling in my gut about how all of this is going to end up. I don't even lie to myself anymore about my reasons for executing the scientists. October 20th, 2077. I finally replied to the outside world over our radio. I don't know why they never sent anyone here to see what was happening when we stopped responding to their transmissions. It doesn't make any sense. Well, they'll come now. I declared ourselves seceded from the Union. They remember Jefferson Davis. What will history say about me? These are the final entries in the first volume of his journals, and it's clearly the beginning of the end. This is the final collapse of any sort of government order at Mariposa, and the point where Maxon fully separates himself from the US government. He tries radio contact and makes a crazy move declaring that his unit seceded from the United States, but he'd never get an answer back from them, and things were about to change even more. And this is where volume 2 of his journals begin. October 22nd, 2077. What the hell is going on? We declare ourselves to be in full desertion from the army and no longer under the government's command, and what happens? Nothing. Something bad is coming down. October 23rd, 2077. I can't believe those bastards finally did it. Damn them all to hell. They finally let the A-bombs fly. We were right in the middle of trying to pry the real story out of von Felden when we completely lost contact. I have a feeling the research center was hit hard. I don't know why, just call it a gut feeling. It seems inconceivable that we were not targeted. I'm sure China will make up for that oversight real soon. Luckily, we had moved our families from outside into the facility the day before yesterday. We do not yet know if the fallout has reached this area. Now I am become Death, the destroyer of worlds. And so it begins. Some interesting things to unpack here. Maxon is rightly confused as to why deserting the US Army and no longer recognizing government authority comes with no response at all. Under normal circumstances, that would definitely trigger an immediate military reaction, especially for a secret project like the FEV. No response meant that something very wrong was going on a national level. Maybe command was either too overwhelmed to respond or already collapsing. The October 23rd entry date is one you all know well. Maxon and his men are still at Mariposa, and then nuclear strikes hit across the world, and all outside communication suddenly cuts off. What's especially important here is the detail about the families. Maxon had ordered the soldiers' families brought inside the base just days before the bombs, which ends up saving a lot of them. Those families and other survivors would become incredibly important to the wasteland later on. It's the group that eventually travels to Lost Hills and forms the Brotherhood of Steel. But Maxon's perspective continues after these bombs. October 25th, 2077. Sergeant Plattner volunteered to go outside today to take specific readings on the atmosphere. It seems the radiation has not spread this far. Since he was wearing his power armor, there was no threat to him from the radiation. But if he had been exposed, he would have had to be exiled. We don't have adequate decontamination facilities here. October 26, 2077. I convinced the men that we should bury the scientists. I don't know why. Perhaps it was to ease my conscience. I finally started to believe their stories when the last one was dying. My God, what have I become? After days of interrogations and executions, Maxon makes the men bury the scientists. He admits it might be to ease his conscience. Earlier, he tried to justify the killings as necessary to prevent a mutiny, but now he's openly questioning himself. He also admits he finally believed the scientist's claims about following orders when the last one was dying. Maybe he realized that the anger that made him do all of this was aimed at the wrong people, or at least people who were part of something way bigger than they controlled. If we put ourselves in his shoes, what would you do? Everything you thought you knew has been flipped upside down. Maxon was a good soldier and believed in his government's cause, and now that's all gone. He's now forced to make some of the most difficult choices while protecting his crew's families. Guilt is already taking over. October 27th, 2077. We're leaving this godforsaken place today. I'm leading the exodus to the old government bunker at Lost Hills. I'm leaving this log behind to be buried when this place goes in the next exchange. Who knows? Maybe someone will find it someday. Obviously, his story didn't end here. In fact, there's a lot more. But for us in this video, this isn't about the diaries of the Brotherhood of Steel commander. These are the stories of another soldier caught up in the events of the Great War, a man who saw atrocities firsthand and fell into a position of power. His men looked to him for guidance, but from these entries, he was just as confused and desperate as them. It drove him to hatred, and maybe those scientists did deserve it, but most of them were just following orders. Maxon watched the chain of command collapse, discovered the truth behind the FEV experiments, made hard choices to try and keep order, and then he saw the world end only a few days later. He lost all faith in the government and in blind obedience, in the idea that powerful technology would always be used responsibly. What came to be in its place was a belief that some knowledge was too dangerous to be left unchecked. The man who walked out of Mariposa wasn't just a soldier anymore. He was someone changed by guilt and the need to make sure the same mistakes never happened again. He was one bomb survivor that would go on to cause a massive butterfly effect that would affect the wasteland for the foreseeable future.
If you're anything like me, you probably enjoy the holotapes where we get just a taste of what others experienced when the bombs fell. It's like we get to experience a sliver of the panic others must have felt, which is why the Skylane's Flight 1665 final transmission stands out to me. Now yes, the final transmission from this Skylane's flight is relatively short. It's barely a few seconds long, but that's also why it works. This was a commercial plane doing what thousands of planes had done before it, approaching Boston from the west, clearing heavy winds, but nothing out of the ordinary. In fact, in the beginning, the pilot is calm and professional, and he's focused on lining up with the runway 2. It all just sounds so routine, the kind of recording that normally ends with landing gear and maybe a Karen or two that claps when the plane lands. But then something breaks that rhythm. Mid-sentence, the pilot stops talking about headings and runways and asks a question that doesn't belong in a cockpit.
Approaching Boston from the west, we've got heavy winds, but it shouldn't be a problem. Lining up for runway 2 at heading... What the hell is that? Some kind of bright light from the north!
That's the last thing anyone ever hears from Flight 1665. What happened next isn't on the holotape, but the wreckage fills in the rest. No, the nuke didn't hit the plane directly, but instead it detonated north of Boston, close enough that the shockwave slammed into the aircraft while it was still lining up for landing. The left engine failed instantly and caught fire, and then the plane lost control. During the descent, it struck something solid enough to tear the left wing clean off, and we actually see that the fuselage split in two. What was left slid across the earth and came to rest in what would later become the glowing sea. Yet somehow, it didn't completely disintegrate. The crash site is more intact than any other civilian plane in the Commonwealth, with one wing still being intact and the cockpit miraculously existing at all. We see seats, even luggage, scattered like the passengers might one day come back for it. There are first aid kits that were never opened, suitcases that were never claimed, a storage compartment that still seals tight enough to block radiation centuries later. That's what makes it feel familiar. It's this little piece of environment from the pre-war world existing in a zone of hell. A moment frozen just after the world decided it was done with moments like this. But if you look close enough, there's also a subtle contradiction here. The flight data recorder ends the moment the pilot sees the flash. We never hear a mention of any kind of engine failure. We might even expect a drop in on a mayday call, but obviously it immediately goes dead. But if you follow the radio signal from relay tower 0db521, you hear a longer exchange. We actually hear the pilot talking to Boston Airport and discussing landing procedures with no mention of a flash at all. Then suddenly, an engine fire and panic, and even the pilot's voice sounds different. Here, give it a listen.
Skylanes 1665, 20 miles out.
Roger, Skylanes 1665, traffic short final. Cleared to land on runway 18 left.
Copy, 18 left. Coming in at 475 knots, that's 47... hang on, control. Damn it, fire in left engine. We're losing power in left engine. Okay, let's put it out. Left engine to idle. Shit, we're still losing power. That's it, no power in left engine. Boston Center, Skylanes 1665, declaring an emergency. Left engine failure. We're out 15-3 at this time.
Copy that, Skylanes 1665. Request emergency landing. Clearing runway 18 left. Can you make it?
That's a negative, Boston Center. Losing altitude too quickly. We will not make it to runway.
1665, say again?
We're going down! I repeat, we're going down!
Now, realistically, both recordings shouldn't coexist cleanly. A nuclear detonation that close would have blinded anyone looking toward it, so there wouldn't have been time for calm radio chatter afterward. This means one of two things happened. Either one recording cuts off too early, or the other keeps going longer than it should, but Fallout never gives us a clean answer. Is it intentional, or is it oversight? I don't know. But the truth is, the difference doesn't really matter. Whether the pilot saw the bomb first or felt it second, the outcome was locked in. Flight 1665 died because history arrived faster than anyone expected. It was a normal flight that happened to still be in the air when the world ended. Everyone on board survived the war for a few extra seconds, long enough to be confused, long enough to ask a question but not long enough to hear an answer. Skylane's flight 1665 crashed because sometimes survival comes down to timing. And on October 23rd, 2077, being in the wrong place by a few miles was enough to erase an entire plane from the sky. You thought only one flight recording managed to survive 2 centuries of decay? Or maybe you're like me where you thought that the flight data recorder was just a typical copper globe that could be scrapped for parts and was just a simple junk item. But these things are important to the lore, and as we see again, it's found in the cockpit of an aircraft, showing us once more a glimpse of someone who saw the world as it was ending. The recording from Skylane's flight 1981 jumps right into it and starts already broken. The first thing you hear is the pilot calling Boston Tower and getting nothing back. Just dead air, foreshadowing their fate. That silence is an answer in itself, and it tells us the world has already moved on before the crew even had time to realize it.
Boston Towers, Skylanes 1981. Acknowledge, over. Damn it, what's going on? Oh, God. Mayday, Boston Towers, Skylanes 1891. We've lost engines. We're breaking up. There! Aim for the road! Pull up!
We hear the pilot repeat Mayday 3 times and muscle memory kick in from his hours of countless flying and the way he learned to navigate these types of situations in flight school. Flight 1981 was coming in from Chicago on the morning of October 23rd as a normal commercial flight with passengers in their seats and luggage stowed. They were close enough to Boston to see it when the bombs hit, and I love that we get a second plane in the mix because anyone that's been to Boston or lives there knows just how busy that place actually is. Transients are iconic to the background of the city and flights are constant, so the plane here feels very real and familiar. We find that the nuclear blast didn't strike the plane directly though, but it didn't need to. The shockwave tore into it anyway, ripping engines apart and destabilizing the fuselage in seconds. In the absence of airports or instructions, they look for a long flat surface, a gamble that maybe rubber and asphalt can substitute for concrete and lights. We hear very gizmo types of sounds and then the tape ends, but the crash site tells you how close they came and adds to the overall story. The pilots actually managed to get the plane low enough to try. It clipped the overpass instead of landing on the road, and the impact tore the aircraft apart and sent it tumbling into a gulch between rocky bluffs. If you take a step back and look at the scene, we find that the wings snapped off completely, and the fuselage split into multiple sections. Whatever momentum remained carried pieces hundreds of feet away. There's no intact moment here like with Flight 1665. We don't get a sense that time politely stopped, and in contrast to the other flight, this wreck looks like violence, like a scene straight out of War of the Worlds. But there's loot to be had here. By 2287, the crash site has been picked over countless times. Raiders, scavengers, super mutants, the children of Adam, everyone passes through eventually, and the plane becomes just another landmark amidst all the other new landmarks in the Commonwealth. If you walk around the area, there's even a gunner outpost nearby. A highway collapsed under the weight of history, now used as a firing position. The road the pilots aimed for still exists, just not in the way they needed it to. Flight 1981 leaves behind a simple story for us to talk about and adds to the environmental storytelling Fallout's so good at. The recording tells us everything we need to know in under 30 seconds. The world ended mid-flight, and the people in the cockpit tried to solve an impossible problem with the few seconds they had left.
A while ago, we talked about Carrie Delaney and her experience with her class on a field trip during the falling of the bombs. This eventually led to the beginnings and formation of Little Lamplight as we know it. But it wasn't just Carrie that recorded her experience during the events. We also have the diary of Jason Grant, one of the founding members of Lamplight. He left behind 2 entries in the form of holotapes, and he gives us his take on what it was like a month into the apocalypse. You would expect most 10-year-olds to shut down during this time, rightfully so. It would have been terrifying for adults to go through, but a 10-year-old kid is just terrible. But Jason had other ideas. He was one of the few who decided to do something about his situation.
I guess this thing is working. I'm Jason Grant. I'm 10 years old. I'm in Miss Delaney's class at Early Dawn Elementary. A month ago, a big war came and everything was destroyed. Except us. We're still okay in these caves. Kind of. Mrs. Delaney went out this morning to get help, and she never came back. The other adults never came back either. So now it's just us kids. A lot of the others still cry every day. They're really scared. I'm not. There's nothing to be scared of. As long as we don't go outside. Nobody else wants to be in charge, so I'm gonna try. Most of the kids listen to me already, so it should be easy.
A month in, and all of the adults had left Little Lamplight. We don't know if they decided to go for help, which is what I would expect from Carrie, but the rest of them probably decided that with the rations being gone, they had a better chance going on without the kids. That would be a huge commitment for anyone, to take care of a bunch of children that didn't belong to any of these teachers. Literally, there were 82 of these kids when they first went on this field trip. If I was in that position, I really don't know what I'd do. So now that the adults are gone, Jason decides to step into the leader position. He knows everyone else is scared, but not him. He's a brave-ass kid. Another month goes by and Jason leaves his last journal entry. The kids end up discovering Vault 87 and try to get inside. They bang on the doors, they can even hear people inside, but those adults refuse to let them in. Honestly, it was for the best. Imagine if they did take them in and use them during the FEV experiments. But Jason's last entry shows us why they hate adults, and where that culture kind of stems from, because one of the vault dwellers actually speaks to them on the other side of the door.
It's been almost 2 months, and we're all doing pretty good. Even if we are all alone, there's a door that leads to a vault, right here in the caverns. Every day we bang and bang, but they won't let us in. We can hear them in there. One time, a guy on the other side told us we were dead already. Fuck those grown-ups. Fuck them all. We don't need them ever again.
This wasn't the end of Jason's story, though. There was one more journal entry left in Little Lamplight. The recording of a young girl who stays anonymous to us, but she describes what happens during the next month in the caverns.
We've been in here for 3 months now, and it's way better than it used to be. Who says kids can't take care of themselves? Jason has done a really good job keeping everyone busy. He says if we want to survive, we need to work together and work hard. A few of the kids have started saying we're like a whole new city. A city of kids. They call it Little Lamplight. It's so cool. All of us voted, in secret. And tomorrow, we're going to tell Jason that he's the city's first mayor. He's going to be so happy with us.
With Carrie's story and Jason's, we get a pretty good picture of how Little Lamplight as a settlement came to be. What happened in those dark caverns to a bunch of children on a field trip is pretty horrific. And really, it should have ended worse than it did. All of them left alone after just a month to fend for themselves, cut off from any help or food, and they just had to figure it all out on their own. The adults that they'd put their trust and faith in just a month before had all abandoned them, or at least died before they could find any help for them. Then they find a vault, something they've seen in a million ads thanks to Vault Tech, telling them that it's the safest place they could be, knowing that there's more adults inside, and they're still turned away from that as well. But instead of falling apart and following the Lord of the Flies path, they stuck together and they made Jason their mayor, a true leader who was courageous enough to try and survive for all of them. What happened here would change Little Lamplight to its core and create this crazy little town that we run into all those centuries later. Of course they hate Mungos. You would too if you were one of them. But it's pretty amazing what they made of their little city. They did a better job surviving than a lot of the other settlements on the surface. Before getting into Peter Stevens' journal entries, it helps to understand who he was and what kind of place Vault 87 really was. He wasn't always insane, he was just a man who was already trapped in one of the worst vault experiments ever created. Peter was a technician class 3, stationed inside Vault 87, which means he wasn't security or upper management. He was just part of the maintenance and technical staff responsible for keeping the vault working. Vault 87 itself was never meant to protect its residents. Like most Vault Tech facilities, it was built for experimentation. In this case, the vault was used to test the forced evolutionary virus on human subjects. People were being exposed to FEV. Peter lived in the vault during all of this, and at some point, his son Jason died inside the vault, under what was listed as unexplained cause. We know that a lot of these unexplained deaths were due to the FEV experimentation program, which means Jason might have been another victim of what was happening here. And no, this Jason is not the same Jason from Lamplight, just in case you were starting to theorize. His son's death is the center of Peter's story. This was a father trapped in a sealed hellhole where people were disappearing or dying, and he couldn't do anything to stop it. Peter left behind a bunch of journal entries on terminals in the vault, most of them corrupted. I wanted to add his story because the events of 87 all happened within a year of the bombs falling. It was a quick downfall for all of them. Journal entry 06A02. I don't know what to do. My Jason, my little boy, he's gone. My wife won't talk anymore. She just sits in this godforsaken sublevel and stares out of the window at the rock wall, as if looking across a sunlit meadow or a lazy summertime lake. Jason was my life. He was my joy, my meaning. Now all of this work seems pointless. This was a mistake. Better we had all died together outside than inside this permanent tomb. I'm scared. Journal entry 06A05. Nothing has meaning to me anymore. Every time I'm in the outer tunnels, I swear I can hear children's laughter. The vault doctors say it's just my mind compensating for the loss of Jason, but I know I'm not crazy. They gave me new pills, but pills are for crazy people. I refuse to take these pills. I am not crazy. Why bring up kids in a hellhole like this? Why? This is a pointless existence. He probably wasn't crazy. He was most likely hearing the kids stuck in the lamplight caverns. He was definitely going through some terrible grief. But I think the Vault Tech scientists were taking advantage of this, giving Peter mystery pills. We got one last entry from Peter himself, and reading this might be confusing, as you'll see. Journal entry 06A07. Can't stand the sound anymore. Take the pills, they say. Why take them? I am not crazy. I am not crazy. Jason's laughter. No, family gone forever. Stuck here for ever, eternity, end. I am sane. I am me. I am forever. We don't really know what was happening to Peter in this last entry, but I would assume that his grief had finally taken a turn for the worst. Like so many other survivors we hear about in this series, trauma breaks most of them. They can't handle the reality that they existed anymore. And Jason was the catalyst for Peter's decline into his own psychosis. Of course, he finally went crazy. He kept hearing children, but he never actually knew that it was real. The doctors just kept pushing that he was losing it. I have to wonder if Peter ever became part of those unexplained deaths, just like his son Jason. Another subject for the FEV program.
Alright, I get it. Not everyone who is a Fallout fan is a Fallout 76 fan. But listen, I actually think that 76 has some of the best holotape lore around. For all the issues when 76 released, the game has gotten better, and one of the smallest details that Bethesda got right in the game is the voice acting. A lot of what I've heard is top tier, and the survivor story of Nurse Scott is no different. We hear him talk shit about the government, and he gives us insight into the fact that he's one of the responders, which is a group that was once prominent in Appalachia before it got wrecked by the Scorched Plague, much like most groups and factions did. I don't want to spoil the rest of it for you, but I will say it involves aliens, perhaps Zedans. But let us know what you guys think. Is he manic? A conspiracist perhaps? Or is he onto something?
Responder Dasa gave me some supplies in exchange for my survivor story. So, hi. My name is Scott Shepard, and things are going all right. I was a nurse before the war, and I guess nothing much has changed. I just work for the responders now, and I don't get paid. The government is basically the same now as it was years ago. Wrecked, disorganized, cannot be trusted. Everyone knows this. You want to know why the war actually happened? Aliens. You think I'm joking? Listen, now right before everything went to hell, I saw him. I was grilling hamburgers out in the yard with my dog, and I heard rustling from the bushes and a zapping noise. Next thing I know, I'm lightheaded, and I felt myself falling to the ground. And I didn't even have a lot to drink. I woke up, and I saw some little thing run into the bushes with my dog following it. And I knew something was wrong. I found my dog later with a clump of green skin in his mouth. Green, like moss or something. The bombs fell almost 10 days later. 9 days, 19 hours to be exact. That's 235 hours precisely. You know what that is, right? That's right. The atomic number of the fissile isotope of uranium. They had a plan from the very beginning. Why would they come after me first? Scott Shepard, the nurse. Well, good question. I'm glad you asked. They have our blood. They knew which ones of us would survive. This is one big experiment to them. This whole thing was staged. Our lives, our thoughts, everything was designed for us, just like this conversation. Every word I'm saying. Planned. Time to wake up, Appalachia. Find the ones holding the strings and cut the cords.
The Boston Bugle building terminals don't document the end of the world as it happens. In fact, if you look at the dates on these guys, they actually document the week before it occurs. In some ways, it's not as shocking because you don't hear panic as the bombs fall, but in other ways, it's worse because of how descriptive these things actually are. The Bugle bills itself as trumpeting truth for over 50 years, and the dates on the front page run from October 19th to October 23rd, 2077, over a span of 4 days. These 4 days are where everything is technically still normal enough to argue about crime and politics while the country is already tearing apart at the seams. The first article claims the case against Eddie Winter is closed. You remember him, right? The old bastard of a ghoul. Boston police announced that one of the city's most notorious crime bosses is somehow completely innocent. Almost like the Epstein files we see today across damn near every political figure and corporate icon. The official statement though reads like satire. Every crime imaginable is quietly acknowledged, but none of it counts. Winter's sub shop is shuttered. His harbor home is empty. He's gone. The paper says the city has nothing to fear anymore. What it doesn't say is why the case collapsed, or who decided it needed to. The article ends pretending closure is the same thing as justice. Now, I wanted to read a snippet from the first article because of how familiar it all sounds in today's world. It was an unexpected turn of events to be sure. According to the Boston Bugle's confidential sources within the Boston Police Department, the innocent man was anything but. As uncovered by Captain Widmark's official investigation, codenamed Operation Winter's End, Eddie Winter was involved in every crime imaginable, from petty larceny to first-degree murder. And although nothing was proved, everyone on Widmark's task force suspected Winter in the August homicide death of their lead detective's fiancée, a Miss Jennifer Lands. It's almost like Fallout knew that justice doesn't always get fully served if you're an influential person. But by the second article, the tone shifts outward. We read, war. Has there been any extended period of time in recent memory in which soldiers have not fought, bled, and died all for the sake of furthering the political goals of one's government or another? The short answer is no. The long, more terrifying answer is that we have not yet begun to experience the extent of human suffering. From Anchorage in frigid Alaska to Shantou on our enemy's doorstep, American troops have been embroiled in brutal battle. They have taken and lost many lives, a nearly uncountable number. But not entirely, because the truth is the casualties have been countable. These conflicts, however horrible, have all been in some inexplicable, perverted way manageable. Through taxes and various wartime revenues, the United States government has been able to fund a standing army the likes of which this country has never before seen. The same is certainly true of our mortal foe China, and with each dollar spent comes a natural accounting of how the dollar was spent. Every bullet, every bunker-busting bomb, every body bag, soon after each is used in the theater of war. We know every how, when, and where. But the sad, obvious truth is that the days of manageable war have nearly come to an end. In the minds of the world's great leaders, those billions of dollars haven't merely been spent, they've been wasted. Because here we are, after more than a decade of constant warfare with no clear end, and no clear winner in sight. So really, at this point, what other option do these superpowers have, if not the nuclear one? And therein, of course, lies the rub. For when China or the United States launches its nuclear missiles and drops its atomic bombs, there will be no one left to count the casualties, let alone the ordnance. No one left to declare victory. So then only one question remains. Is there any way the powers of the world can prevent a nuclear apocalypse? Is there any hope left for the world? We must believe the answer is yes. But these are hopeless times. The second article is about war, and the idea of war becoming unmanageable. The writer openly wonders if nuclear war is the only option left, and still tries to end on hope. The piece asks whether the world's leaders can prevent apocalypse, even as it admits no one seems capable of stopping what's already in motion. And by the third article, it brings everything home. There's food riots in Roxbury, soldiers opening fire on starving civilians. The official statement says hunger isn't an excuse. The army spokesperson insists the troops hadn't eaten in 2 days either, as if that somehow balances the scales. But Boston Bugle is based, and it prints a civilian witness account. An 85-year-old woman says, quote, "They were laughing, joking about who they were going to shoot first. It was all a game to them. Those soldiers may not have fired on the crowd before the window got broke, but they was looking forward to it all the same." End quote. The article doesn't tell you which version is true though, but it doesn't have to. The contradiction is the story. By this point, the country is fully grinding its way into hours before hell. I actually like the way the fourth article reads because I could definitely see this scenario happening. We read, "For more than half a year, the West Wing of America's most famous residence has remained shrouded in near complete darkness. A skeleton crew of manual laborers remains on staff to maintain the property, but nobody has lived or worked politically there for several months." And even though the White House press corps was unofficially and unceremoniously disbanded around the same time, the media has remained steadfast in answering that most important of questions. Where is our president? At first, the assumption was that the entirety of the United States government had moved operations to Raven Rock, the military operations center located in the mountainous region of Pennsylvania just a few miles northeast of the presidential retreat in Camp David, Maryland. But further investigations have revealed that neither the president nor his cabinet have been to the Raven Rock complex in over a year. So if not Raven Rock, then where? Thanks to an extensive and exhaustive investigation, the Boston Bugle has uncovered the answer, and our readers will likely consider it as strange as it is shocking. The president has been leading our country from a Poseidon Energy oil rig just off the coast of San Francisco. It's certainly an odd choice for a presidential command center. Or is it? Not as much as it may seem, as our investigation discovered. Thanks to the testimony of a highly placed anonymous source, the Boston Bugle has learned that the official designation of the oil rig is actually Control Station Enclave, giving credence to the long-running rumors of a secret militarized shadow government known as the Enclave that would take control of the United States in the event of a nuclear conflict. And so the mystery of the missing president has finally been solved. But in doing so, has the Boston Bugle also uncovered evidence that the end of the world, in the form of total atomic war, is also at hand? Sadly, the president's silence seems to speak volumes. By the fifth article, the Boston Bugle pivots away from all the doom and gloom, and we see a glimmer of hope elsewhere. Boston is about to win the World Series for the first time since 1918. The tone is celebratory, almost giddy. The writer jokes that, quote, on Saturday, October 23rd, 2077, the only thing that could snatch away victory is an act of God or some obscene calamity of man, close quote. I think we have to admire the writer over at Bethesda for this one, because this is some dark shit, but at least there's some humor in there. We see that the Boston Bugle went out doing its job by reporting corruption and covering war, documenting suffering and hyping a baseball game. All of it existed side by side right up until the moment it didn't matter anymore. These terminals are about normalcy overstaying its welcome. The world didn't end because people weren't paying attention, it ended because for a few more days they still were. Have you ever wondered what someone from Vault Tech sounded like? I'm not talking about someone fully sinister like an overseer that was perhaps some part of a broader conspiracy. I'm talking about someone who just wanted to get out and see the world, but lived in a monotonous life like so many of us do.
Hello, person in the distant future. Dasa told us these tapes would be used as historical records someday. Pretty nifty. So, my name is Miguel Caldera. Let's see, my story begins in an office. I used to be a programmer at Vault Tech. One of many. You know, nobody special, you see. And, and that's okay. I used to stare out that window by the coffee machine and think, shucks, I wish I could leave this job and hike in the woods every day. I dream about walking the Appalachian Trail, setting up camp wherever I liked, and traveling with close friends. Dreams kept me going. And, well, when the bombs fell, I was terrified, just like anybody else. I wasn't in a vault, so I just, I had to figure it all out too. The responders found me. I had a little campsite, some supplies. I hacked a Protectron to guard me while I slept, but I miss people. I did. It's been alright, The apocalypse and all. I know that seems weird, but I have freedom now. I can actually help people. I even met somebody. A volunteer who delivers supplies. Imagine that, right? Even when you think everything is over, it's not. It goes on. I mean, it's awful too. Don't get me wrong. All the people dead and hurt. But, those are things beyond my control. So, I'm making the best of it. These days, I'm important. People treat me like I matter because, well, there's so few of us. We can't afford to think otherwise. So for all you future people, just know that we lived through something horrible, but we did it. Somehow, we're alive. And if you're hearing this, then, well, I guess at least some of us made it, right? So hey, chin up, kiddo. You'll be okay. Okay?
I like that we get to hear him enjoy his life and make lemonade out of lemons, and he seems like someone who needed this new life. It's also badass to hear him reprogram a robot just because he had a programmer skill set. He was one of the few Vault-Tec employees that was actually a good guy. Okay, initially the terminal entries over at the Mass Bay Medical Center aren't quite as entertaining as some of the others we just covered, but Mason and I are on a quest to cover damn near every bit of terminal and holotape lore possible, so our work here continues. The Mass Bay Medical Center terminals start the way most hospital logs do, with complaints and problems with other nurses and difficult patients. It's business as usual. Shout out to our CNAs because I know you deal with this type of stuff on the daily, but it's also the kind of writing that exists purely to survive the day and move on to the next one. However, in one of the entries, we read that the air raid sirens go off, and this time it isn't just a drill. Someone writes that line almost defensively, like they don't trust themselves to believe it just yet. But then the bombs hit. As opposed to panic we typically see, this is stated as just the fact of it. After that, every entry is written inside a world that no longer resembles the one it came from. War reaches the hospital fast, so a perimeter goes up and riots break out in the streets. The staff's families are still out there somewhere, but medical personnel aren't allowed to leave. They're told they're needed here, and that is where they belong now. The hospital stops being a workplace and turns into this kind of containment or quarantine type of zone. It doesn't take long for it to become unbearable though, because, I mean, would you want to be stuck at work while your family is outside during all of this? But more than just that fact, there are more patients than beds, more injuries than hands that can help. A vertibird crashes into the building and wipes out an entire department in seconds. That specific detail is slipped into a log like a scheduling issue because there's no time to process it as anything else. At some point, someone hears a radio signal and a rumor of escape. There's a possible way out. The idea starts circulating quietly because hope is dangerous in a place like this. But then we navigate to the personal logs and they're somehow worse. One starts with brunch plans and leaving early, pushing appointments onto med students to slip out after a shift. It's typical normal life being balanced with the busy life of someone in the med fields. The next entry is written after military extraction. The writer is pulled from a shelter and brought back to the hospital. The med students are still there, except one who tried to leave and was killed by a looter. Then another log admits the writer isn't even a surgeon anymore, just someone cutting and stitching until their hands shake. Things get worse and the military starts turning civilians away. A city council member tries to force his way in and gets killed for it. Authority doesn't mean anything once resources are rationed. After a while, a guy named Major Howell arrives, and he orders the director to pull the plug on all life support patients, not because they're beyond saving, but because resources need to be conserved for military personnel. We find that one tech throws out his back carrying wounded soldiers and is denied painkillers, but the writer plans to steal some later, and we see a quiet rebellion form. But Dr. Sharma doesn't get that luxury. He's accused of stealing supplies and is executed by being thrown off the roof. The log notes it wasn't worth wasting a bullet. By this point, they've been trapped there for over 3 months. Fighting is still raging in the city, and the writer ends with something more disturbing by saying they need to leave because of the way the sergeant has started looking at them, even through filthy scrubs. It's kind of a creepy way to leave things if you ask me, because we get a sense that the sergeant was inhumane and viewed these people as pawns that he could do whatever he wanted to with, whether that was kill them or assault them in grotesque ways. He viewed them as stock. Mass Bay Medical Center failed because medicine doesn't survive when it's forced to serve war first. What started as healing turned into triage, then into obedience. And by the end, the hospital wasn't saving lives anymore, it was deciding which ones were allowed to continue.
Vault-Tec Regional HQ had some interesting terminal entries that I wanted to cover. In these terminals, we get firsthand accounts of Vault-Tec employees just days before the bombs. It gives us some insight as to what the employees were thinking and what they knew about the vaults and each other, and it's really interesting. Dr. Reed was a mid-level Vault-Tec employee, working in the Boston area right before the Great War, and his job put him close enough to operations to see what was being shipped into multiple vaults. But he wasn't high enough up in the company to be told the truth about why. It kind of looks like he worked in an oversight role, tied to logistics and supply coordination, which basically means he just reviewed incoming materials and tracked deliveries. That job made him one of the first people in the office to notice that something wasn't adding up. Martin Reed's personal logs, 9/29. So we just shipped 15 cases of Psycho and Jet to Vault 95. Of course, that makes total sense. Let's give these addicts more of what put them in the situation to begin with. Davidson says it's to force them to make a hard choice, chems or getting clean. I say it's to cause a bloodbath. 10/7. Walter in the warehouse just told me we received a massive shipment marked Vault 111, do not open. So he opened it, and it was hundreds of gallons of liquid nitrogen. What could they possibly need that for? 10/22. That's it. I can't work under a manager who's so oblivious to what's going on around him. These vaults are supposed to be a safe haven for these people, not a lab to run experiments on them. Davidson still doesn't see it, or he's just ignoring it. Either way, I'm putting in my 2 weeks in the morning. Dr. Reed found out what was happening a day before the apocalypse, and it's too bad. Maybe he could have done something about it. Walter Scott was one of the warehouse employees working in the basement storage area of the HQ. He wasn't a scientist or a high-ranking executive. He was more on the ground level of operations, handling incoming shipments, and saw what was being delivered to the vaults in the Boston area. It made him one of the few people who started to notice patterns just like Reed. Walter Scott's personal logs, 1015. I think Mr. Davidson has been getting annoyed with Martin lately. I told Martin he should probably back off a bit because I know Mr. Davidson has a temper. I saw him break a pool cue over Roger's head because he stood too close to the table when Mr. Davidson was taking a shot. Roger still has trouble with his hearing in the right ear. 1019. I miss Sharon. She's been out for a couple of days and it's just not the same here without her. No one upstairs has heard from her. I'm starting to worry. Getting to see her face when I go upstairs for lunch is the highlight of my day. You might be wondering who this Davidson guy is. Well, lucky for us, he left some entries as well. Frank Davidson was the regional manager in charge of the Vault Tech office in the Boston area, and it put him in a position of being in charge of day-to-day operations, the staff, and the handling of supply logistics tied to multiple vaults in the region. He was exactly what you'd expect from a corporate supervisor in the Fallout world, a bootlicker who believed in Vault Tech's mission and expected his employees to follow orders without asking questions. But you know what his employees thought of him, and his own logs show us just how evil he really was. Frank Davidson's personal logs, 10-2. I believe Dr. Reed is under the impression that the vaults in the Boston area will be used to harm its future residents instead of helping them. I told him he's just being paranoid. Vault Tech would never do anything of the sort. 10-13. Sharon spilled coffee on my new shirt while we were in the lounge this morning. I told her it was fine, and we had a good laugh about the whole thing. If she does it again, I'll stab her in the fucking throat with my pen. She's a good kid. 10-19. Dr. Reed is beginning to get on my nerves. All he talks about now are his theories on how the vaults were built to run experiments on people and not actually help them at all. I keep telling him that he couldn't be more wrong. If he keeps it up, I might have to discipline him. He might not have known exactly what was going on, but this was the type of person Vault Tech was putting in charge of areas. He was naive and easy to control.
Hello? Luke, is this thing on?
Yeah, boss. We're rolling.
All right, good. Now get back to work. I can take it from here. This here is Bray Husky, leader of the Husky family and rightful owner of the land previously known as Haddock Cove. And these here tapes are mine as well. We've torn enough scrap wood and metal from the nearby houses to build an outpost on the water and really make a go of it here. We build this thing big and tall enough, we'll be able to see pests coming from a good distance off. No one will be able to catch us with our pants down. Bray Husky, signing off. Shit, Luke, how the hell do you turn this thing off? There's a million buttons on this stupid thing. Screw it, I'm just gonna unplug it.
Bray Husky and his family took advantage of the apocalypse situation and staked some claims on some territory. Now, this isn't taking place near the bombs falling, but I figured it was still a good showcase of how people are still trying to survive even hundreds of years later, almost as if they were starting from the same place as those who lost everything during the Great War. They made an outpost on the water so that they would be able to see any approaching enemies or creatures. Bray left a series of holotapes which explained what happened to his family and their outpost.
Okay, lunkheads, listen up. These here are the chores for the month. I'm only making one of these, so pass it around. And no, I will not be changing my mind again. So stop asking, Braun. Luke, you're in charge of fishing and cleaning fish and cooking fish. Just about anything to do with fish. That's your job, okay? Rowan, you're on building and repairs. Seems like some of the baseboards keep getting loose or torn up. I'm not sure what's getting at them, but fix it. Braun, you've got brush removal again. Gotta clear our line of sights. And yes, you may have to work at night, you big baby. I don't care what you hear. I pulled day guard duty again. We'll swap around at night, same as last month. Even you, Braun, so don't even start whining. That's it. You don't like it? Tough. This is how we get things done around here. Wait, is this thing still on? Damn it! Is it this button? No, of course not. I swear, I'm gonna throw this thing in the water!
Bray took control and started organizing the family to do certain jobs. He might not seem the most capable, but someone's got to do it. But in the next holotape, his ego gets the best of him. He should have started listening to his other family members.
All right, new announcement. So listen. Whoa! Luke, what are you doing in here? I'm making my next tape here.
Boss, Braun's off in his bunk whimpering about something. He says he saw something peering up at him from under the baseboards.
Are you kidding me? He's a grown man, for God's sake. He's too old to be jumping at the boogeyman.
Maybe, but he's refusing to do his chores. On top of that, Rowan keeps hiding in the water and jumping out at him. Scares him half to death.
Fine. Go round up those chuckleheads, and I'll have a talk with them both. This place would fall apart without me, I swear. Oh, for crying out loud, this thing is still recording. Luke, how the hell do you make this thing stop?
Big red button marked stop recording.
I knew that.
We find his last tape right next to his cold, dead body.
This is Bray Husky. And this is probably my last recording. Oh, jeez. I can see my friggin' guts here. They came up from underneath us. Big, huge freaking Maya lyrics. Tons of them. The dead fish and chum must have lured them to us. Oh, God. My leg. The rest are dead. All dead. Luke got pinched right in half, and I saw Rowan screaming while another one pulled him under. His eyes. Jesus, his eyes. I went to get Braun and found some huge fish, man, thing, eating what was left of him. He clawed me right across my guts before I could get a shot off. Oh, jeez. This place was impenetrable. We could see anyone coming for miles. Oh, underwater goddamn fish monsters. I just hope... Oh, God, no. Oh, it found me. No, no, no. You get back. Get away from me. Oh, God. Is this thing still recording? You've got to be kidding me.
Bray's tendency to leave the recording going reminds me a lot of the Grizzly Man, Timothy Treadwell. He unfortunately recorded his last moments during a bear attack, and it's truly awful. I've heard that the actual tape has never been released, but even the recreation will haunt you. I strongly suggest not listening to it. But poor old Bray ended up as Mirelurk bait as a group of them stormed their outpost.
It's not often that we get to hear from one of the Lordsmen themselves, but it's always welcomed here since rarely do we hear religious folks speak in the series. Sure, there's the Children of Adam or even Father Clifford in Fallout 3, but again, they're just not that frequent. Maybe because it's hard to have faith or hope in anything, but we see that shortly after the bombs fell, Reverend Delbert Winters finds a higher purpose.
Reverend Delbert Winters here, born and raised in this very town. Lent my own church to the responders for their outpost here, and you're welcome. The responders are on a true mission, you see, helping folks through thick and thin, till the heavens open up again and take us all up anyways. When this all happened, I figured like most it was time. This was the end, but it wasn't, was it? We're still here. At first, I thought it was a mistake, that we was missed, forgotten. Maybe we did some wrongs, didn't give enough to charity maybe, didn't praise his name even in the worst of times. Maybe thought some things that ought not to been thought. So I asked him. I asked how? Why? I fought your wars on Earth. I'm ready to fight them up there by your side. Then, in my despair, I saw some survivors eating raw rat carcass behind a dumpster. You ought to cook that first, I warned them. Seemed obvious. We tried but got sick, they said, covered in their own filth. I realized right then and there that I was being tasked. From then on, I built kitchens, cooked good food, fed anyone who walked up with an empty belly, and I was thankful for my task in life. Thankful. Next time hell or high water land at my stoop, I'll be swept clear away with it. But until then, let's share a home-cooked meal together, all right?
It's kind of cool to see someone ask theological and philosophical questions like this. And whereas half the people are leaving personal memoirs that are pessimistic, it's refreshing to hear an optimistic spin on things. Is it because he hasn't lived on hell on earth for 200 years like some of the others have in the installments of the franchise? Maybe. Or maybe Delbert really is that guy.
Just talking to this? Oh, yeah, am I loud enough? Okay. Hi. What do you want me to say exactly?
Yeah, so just talk about how you got here and maybe a little bit about your life. This is a historic document. Go ahead, Tabitha.
Okay, so, well, thanks. Okay. I've been sober for 9 days. I got here 9 days ago. My name is Tabitha. And this is my story. I just found out about everything. The war, the bombs, I just realized this was, really happening. For years, I thought the chems were playing tricks with my mind, hurting my brain. Thought it was the worst trip ever. Every time I'd come out of my haze long enough to look for food, I'd find more chems and, well, I kept going. And I kept seeing madness. Look, I would have been wandering around fighting giant rats and eating garbage if not for the responders. They're good folks. That doc in the church, got me some meds that are helping out a lot. And they have group therapy meetings and it's good. It's good. I think it's helping. But listen, you should avoid the mountains. They'll just get you mixed up. Get you doing things you don't want to do. Hurting people mostly. And there are so many chems up there. I spent too long there and I hurt people. I couldn't think right. I couldn't.
Oh, it's okay, Tabitha. Remember what we said in the group? Take your Addictol and rest, and things will be okay soon. It's okay. We're here for you.
Yeah, I'm taking it. When I feel better, I'm going out west, though. Getting out of this place. Getting away from the chems, all of this. I feel better every day, but, years of chems, years of rads, years of sleeping in the muck. It adds up. Yeah. I'm gonna get back to sleep now, okay?
Okay. Thanks for sharing your story, Tabitha. Get some sleep. You'll be okay. You're safe now.
This is an interesting one. We hear that Tabitha is recently sober, but ironically, she takes a chem to help with her addiction. I never thought about how many chems may have been in the mountains of Appalachia prior to hearing this tape, but it makes sense since there's so many raiders in that part of the map at the time, and chems and raiders tend to be heavily correlated. This also might be one of the saddest holotapes not only in the game, but in the entire Fallout series. As someone who lost a parent to addiction, I personally have witnessed that addicts struggle with having people in their orbit and that they quite often feel alone. It's unfortunate that by the time Tabitha sobers up, she actually is alone. Yes, it sounds like she has a good support group in the Flatwoods, but everyone she knew and loved is likely gone, so that loneliness is likely even more magnified than most people could possibly imagine. The other sad truth is that addicts want to escape, which is why drugs are such an appealing outlet. And Tabitha mentions leaving the Flatwoods soon, alluding to further escape from the current reality she's living in. But I don't know, what do you guys think? Little Yangtze was a prisoner camp nestled right into Big MT, built to hold Chinese dissidents during the Resource Wars. Officially, it was a detention facility, but how many things has the government said were one thing but acted as another? So in practice, we see it was a holding pen for people the government no longer felt like explaining. The terminals read like logs as opposed to the views of the prisoners themselves, so don't expect them to be passionate reads coming from the prisoner's POV. Instead, these belong to the guards, but I think that perspective is still important. The first log opens with everything related to efficiency. We can put ourselves in the guard's shoes and imagine 3 trainloads of people arriving. The writer calls them communist infiltrators and notes that half of them don't speak English, so there's really no attempt at verbal communication. They're shown where to go with nightsticks instead, like a game of charades. It's written fairly casually, like crowd control at a sports game or some uneventful event. But towards the end of the log comes a shift in language. The guards might refer to these groups of people as prisoners, but the doctors, well, they're talking about research subjects. The guard shrugs it off though because this is war, so if it advances the war effort, that's enough justification. The second entry is a little bit more manic though. One of the prisoners speaks a little English and is desperate enough to complain. He talks about hungry ghosts taking people in the night. The commandant dismisses it as superstition and throws him in the cooler for 3 weeks though. Case closed. Except the guard writing the log hesitates ever so slightly. He's seen the new robots being developed nearby, and he wonders quietly where they get the brains from. Unfortunately, at this point, we get a little insight that the guard is simply just doing his duties and is the yes man type of guy. But even still, that line in there does a lot of work. It's kind of confirming what the prisoner complained about. The guard knows that it's a question that shouldn't exist in a normal prisoner camp. The final entry somewhat wraps it up for us viewers though. There's another escape attempt, but they don't specify just how many tried in the past to leave. They don't say what happened to the others either, just that they were quote unquote processed. Triple shifts are now required because of the toll that the prisoners are giving. Internal team morale is dropping and we see that the guards are exhausted, and the solution isn't fewer prisoners or better conditions. It's Fallout's go-to, which is just more control layered on top of it all. The commandant puts in a requisition to field test total pacification collars, which are experimental devices that are tested on prisoners. Because of his yes-man nature we witnessed, the guard doesn't object since he just wants what he calls his goddamn sleep. The story these logs tell aren't one of explosions or heroics, but of systems tightening ever so slowly. People becoming problems, and the problems becoming test cases. Then these test cases become equipment. The prisoners talk about ghosts because they don't have the language for what's actually happening to them. The guards have language, but it's bureaucratic and filtered through whatever propaganda they've been sipping to believe that all of this is okay. It smooths everything over until nothing sounds real anymore. Little Yangtze is about scientific progress continuing uninterrupted. Even in a place designed to erase people, the requisitions go through, and everyone involved finds a way to sleep at night. Unfortunately for us, it's also another piece of environmental storytelling and shadowing since we ourselves find ourselves in a similar situation when Father Elijah does the same shit to us.
West Everett Estates was just another neighborhood full of families and neighbors who knew each other. Like a lot of survivors or people who didn't make it, some of them who lived there were caught in blasts far away from home. One of these people was named Lance, and somehow he and his brother were able to make it back home in Boston all the way from Connecticut. He left us a diary of the events that occurred after that, and how he and his brother were trying to survive. Home, November 8th, 2077. I can't believe we finally made it back home. We were on the freeway in Connecticut when it all went down, and thank God we bailed on the cars. Took us more than a week to make it back here on foot. And the things we saw, I never thought I'd see happen in America. Leon and I talked about the plan to wall up the neighborhood, but I don't think we can do it on our own, and we need Janet to keep the kids safe. Maybe some of the neighbors made it out okay. I might scout out a bit while it's still dark. The walls, December 12th, 2077. We finally got the walls finished with Wayne's help. Still can't believe that Egghead made it out. I feel like such an idiot for laughing at his bunker all summer. He's even got fresh water down there. Leon, March 27th, 2078. God give me strength not to kill my brother. Leon and I were scouting earlier and hid out in a building when we heard a group passing by. 12 men, armed with guns and bats, and wearing some kind of makeshift armor. Leon recognized one of them from when he was running with the mob and called out to them before I could stop him. The damn idiot starts running his mouth off like nothing happened and tells them where we've got a walled fort. They let us go, but I can tell from the glint in their eyes we'll be seeing them again soon. Lance was going through what a lot of survivors go through in these situations. He was looking to make walls around his neighborhood for some defenses, doing all the things people should do instead of worrying and just giving up. Finding food, finding people like his neighbors to help, just being smart about his situation. The problem is, sometimes you can do everything right, but it's the people around you that can make a mistake and cause some unfortunate consequences. There is one more log on the terminal, and sadly, it wasn't from Lance. Look what we have here. Hey, this thing still works. Controls all the lights too, wicked. Damn asshole should have just left and given us the fort. Now he's dead and it's ours anyway. He probably just stole this place from someone else anyway. That dumbass Leon even pissed himself and joined us when we overran the place. We'll probably use the idiot as a meat shield next time we head into the city. That piece of shit Leon got Lance killed and their home stolen. And what's even worse than that is he joined the same raiders that killed his brother. A lot of these survivors aren't heroes. They fall for the low-hanging fruit and decide to hurt other people for their own survival. We've covered a few survivor stories from Fallout 76, but Dasa's is the beginning of all of it. She was the first one to try and convince others that they should record their thoughts and perspectives of what went down and how they were trying to make it. These range from hopeful to devastating. Dasa's story is very interesting because her father was actually a Vault Tech employee and he had slots in a vault, but Dasa couldn't do it and chose to be selfless. I'll let her explain in her tape.
We call it the Great War now. It's not been long and things have been rough. Welcome to Survivor Stories. I'm Dasa Ben-Ami, a responder. I've been working with the responders for a couple years now. I'm from Charleston originally, so it was easy to join up. What wasn't easy was the work. Rebuilding Appalachia from the rubble while survivors flock to us regularly from all over. So many have come and gone. Their stories untold, their names lost to time. I thought we should preserve this history somehow. I've decided to ask people to record their thoughts, their stories, anything they want to preserve forever. I'll call this series The Survivor Stories. I'll start with me. I was an anthropology PhD student at Vault Tech University, final year. I was printing my thesis when I heard the sirens. I thought for sure my father, a Vault Tech employee, could take us all with him, but only 2 reservations came through. I refused to go. With my little brother, he went into the vault. They could not persuade me, though they tried. In the end, I pushed them inside it, and that was it. After that, I went back home to Charleston and, well, survived. Eventually, the responders formed, and I signed up right away. It was so hard. The flood was devastating. Relocating to Morgantown Airport and now Flatwoods has been... I remain optimistic. Been with them now for, I guess 2 years. We have big plans. We can do so much to help. Maybe, just maybe, we can rebuild enough to be okay. And in the meantime, I will continue to record stories of survivors when I can. We are your history. This is Dasa Ben-Ami, signing off for now.
Sadly, we find this tape on her body in the cemetery by the Flatwoods Church, and the Flatwoods terminal tells us that her last check-in was 11:05:96. Kesha's story reminds me a lot of Carrie Delaney's. Just like Carrie, she worked within the school systems and was coordinating a statewide high school science fair in Watauga, and it had the theme of the future of energy. Then the bombs dropped.
Dasa has asked us all to document our stories for posterity, you know. It seems like a fine idea. So, hi, I am Kesha McDermott. When the bombs fell, I was in Watauga, coordinating a statewide science fair for that year's high school kids. And the theme was the future of energy. After the bombs, everything was pretty chaotic. Scavenging for food and fighting off rabid survivors. Oh, it was just a bad time all around. I found a couple of surviving kids from the high school whose parents didn't make it, and we holed up in a house in town for a while. After a bit, I was able to solder the circuitry in an old radio, and we tuned in to a broadcast from the responders. Oh, we were overjoyed. The trip from Watoga to Flatwoods, it was rough, mind you. The kids and I ran into a group of assholes in the mountains who stole our food and water. I can't tell you how happy I was to find the responders in Flatwoods. Tents for everyone, open kitchens, medical supplies, protection. We were safe. They had a problem, though. Their water sources were contaminated heavily. People were boiling water, but not long enough to make it safe. So, I stepped up and I said, I'll build a testing kit to monitor the contamination, and I will teach folks how to properly boil water. And I did. The world is getting better, but slowly. We need to make sure it doesn't relapse, too. It's going to take time and care, that's all. Well, time, care, and science.
Her body can be found by a river, a terrible loss for the responders.
Sophie isn't looking too good these days, and despite her current condition, she is still valuable to us players because she's holding onto a holotape that gives us even more insight into the responders that Nurse Scott didn't give us much detail about. I want to add that the holotape makes her sound more real to us players too. I know, I've been glazing Fallout's environmental storytelling, but it really is part of the backbone that makes 76 good, at least in my opinion. Remember how NPCs weren't really a thing when the game first dropped? Well, the holotape lore helps mitigate some of that. And is it a cop-out? I don't think so. I mean, just give it a listen.
Is this thing on? Great. Hello, survivors of this garbage dump. I'm Sophie, and this is my stupid survivor story. How this dumb shit go? Oh yeah. Before the bombs, I was a librarian, and now I can read everything all the time. Whee! Look at me! I'm lucky. Wait, no. Maybe. As one of those farmers who prepared for the end times. Some sort of religious thing. Yeah, that's right. No, I got it. I was a sweet little kid and lived off some cat food containers in a super duper mart for months near my parents' rotting carcasses. Nobody came. Nobody. I learned how to deal. You should too. The responders are a joke. Nobody helps anybody anymore. Get a grip. If you're not a total idiot, you'll get out of this dump before the responders get you killed. Leave the sick behind. You're better off. Trust me. Whiny babies can stay here and play make-believe, but anyone with half a brain will go up to the mountains and drop the dead weight. Delbert already tried to stop me. Sorry to say nobody will be around to teach you how to eat shit now, Flatwoods. Bye, suckers. Love always, Sophie.
This is the story of Willie Mae. Is she prophetic? Well, maybe. And if you're religious folk, some believe that towards the end of times, or Armageddon, the veil gets closer to Earth and miracles begin to occur. And we see that Willie Mae actually prophesies that her grandkids would make it into a vault in time. Or maybe she's living on false hope. But that's not up for me to judge.
I pressed the button. Hush! I think it's recording now. Shush! Hello? Hello there? I think it's working.
I hate these things. This is Willie May, and I was asked to talk a bit about my life since the war to help educate future children someday. I think that's nice. I thought I'd just watch my programs and entertain the grandkids in my retirement, but that didn't turn out to be the case. I'm just glad they all made it to the vault in time, you see. When I saw it in a dream, I knew my prayers were answered. My husband Frank used to work in the mines. Just a bit before the war, there was news of tremors, and he didn't come home. I don't know what happened to him or why he never came home for sure. And between you and me, I'm fine with that. Since the war, I've just read my old newspapers and listened to music. It's very peaceful for once, which is just right nice by me. You ever hear of the Watauga Times Atomic Lottery? The winner got 10 years' worth of Blamco mac and cheese, Salisbury steak, and Nuka-Cola, of course. I played that lottery for 20 years, and I finally won the month before the war. It lasted only 8 years, though. But who can you complain to? By the time it ran out, I had heard the responders' radio broadcast, so I went out to find them and get supplies. Bless their hearts. Well, I'm going home now. For a bit anyways. How do I turn this thing off? Oh, blast these things. Not this button. Not this one. Oh, here it is.
It's endearing that she mentions her husband here. At first, I thought maybe she was being callous when she was fine that he never came back from the mines. But I actually think it's coming from a place of self-reflection and acceptance of the world she was beginning to live in, the changed world. It just sucks she never got to experience the lottery to its fullest. I mean, from that perspective, maybe she's one of the unluckiest folks in Appalachia. What logs and holotapes stood out to you guys? I personally love the holotapes in Appalachia since a lot of them feel more personal, like with the addict Tabitha who is coming off of chems. So if you drop some of your favorites in the comments that we might have missed, we can snag them next time. Thank you guys for watching, we really do appreciate it, and remember, enjoyed time is never wasted time, and we'll see you in the next.